Scott, she's pretty positive, so I'm gonna start. Just when she comes.
Just talk shit.
Joe, are you good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I was gonna tell him it's gonna be 400.
Good. So are we good? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start. Johnson's going to be a few minutes late. Will join us. Welcome to the Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 Garrison Board of Education Business Meeting and Community Budget Forum. Okay, Desi, will you call the roll, please?
Jocelyn Epicello,
Excuse for now.
Eric Arnold.
Here.
Jennifer Harrington Wilson.
Here.
Dan Jasnow.
Here.
Peter Lester.
Here.
Ken Schott.
Here.
Sarah Torm.
Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, we have accept agenda changes. Do I have any proposed changes to this evening's agenda?
I'd like to propose that we move the discussion of the SRO SPO follow-up to after the school lunch discussion before the budget presentation.
So C becomes B. Is that right?
No,
D after that A. D becomes C. Okay.
And then C becomes D.
All right. Is anyone, is that okay with everyone else?
Yep.
Okay. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as amended. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stoll for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah, members of the board, community members. I will be brief because we do have a presentation this evening that I'm really looking forward with Allison, Marge, and Mr. Roman. So first I want to always talk a little bit about a lens into our schools. Last week we had, and I'm still sore from it, but we had 8th grade versus staff, parents, and we did get some ringers, some past students on our Slack. I won't tell you who won. You can ask the 8th graders. They're still sore about it. But we did raise almost $1,000 for this event. So I want to thank the 8th grade advisors or 8th graders, the PTA who helped support this event, and all the staff that came that participated or worked the scoreboard. There were obstacle courses for the young kids, a halftime free throw contest, and a basketball game in between. So it was a lot of fun. I'm still recovering. I wanted to give the board and the community an update. We've talked about this briefly, but our design committee made up of students and staff and parents and myself, we've really made some progress. We have selected a vendor for the school signs. They have some renderings that I've shared with the Board of Education. They are under budget, which I know is music to the community and the board's ears. So we're ready to move forward when the board wants to select one of the renderings, the design. We believe it's going to be a nice addition. We also have 3 artists that are interested in working with us, commissioning them to work with our students. I want to thank Mr. Young for his leadership on really spearheading this. The committee looked through the folks that have put in an application. Mr. Young has done an incredible amount of work with them, making sure that each of the artists want to work with all of our students so that our students co-create this design that we will place above us as a mural. We would also said we wanted it to not be painted on so that if we need to do repairs or movement, it would be kind of affixed to it and we could take it down in the future, or if we needed to make some repairs to the wall, the art wouldn't be lost or ruined. Lastly, and I want to thank our own Ms. Callow for really spearheading this, we are going to have some new art in the vestibule. which is a welcome sign and a picture of the original 1908 building. And we're also having a vendor come in to look at casement work in our entry and some of the indentation in the hallway to display a lot of historical pictures, art, awards that we have won that we have no place to put, that are just sitting in storage. We want to celebrate our accomplishments academically, historically, artistically. So I'm really excited about what we can do to enhance the school environment. I really want to thank our students who have been instrumental, our parents have been instrumental, our staff, and this design committee of really moving the ball forward. We've been silent on it for a little bit, but we think we're going to cross the finish line here. I just wanted to give the community and the board an update with respect to where we are on our safety and security. We've been looking at this, as everybody knows. We are in the process, as I stated earlier, we are looking at a mass notification and incident management software. We're already in the process working with the vendor and the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center to onboard a program called InformaCast Single Wire. So we're in the process. We hope to have that for next year as part of an enhancement to our safety and security. We are also in the process of reviewing an anti-violence program. We have several contenders. I've met with our clinical team, Krista and Dave. We're looking at implementing this in the middle school next year at little to no cost. There are no cost programs out there. We haven't made a decision on a program, but one of the contenders is the Say Anything program from Sandy Hook Promise. We can implement that in our health program in the middle school for next year. Lastly, I know there were some questions by the board, by the community with respect to, are we doing everything we can in our SEL programming and our mental health services? I met with Allison and our clinical team. We discussed this deeply. This was their time to ask if they needed anything. They said, Greg, we really have a well-orchestrated, well-thought-out SEL program, layered at the different levels with several different programs, an advisory program in the middle school. Our mental health, we believe we have the capacity. They have assured me that there are no unmet needs in those areas or requests. I said, if there's something that you think we need, let me know. They said, Greg, no, we're good. We really are proud of what we have. Our teachers are well trained. We're really in tune with our students. Our students are happy. We really believe we've done all we can in order to support their social and emotional well-being as well as their mental health. And they have resources on the outside if they need it in crisis situations. So I just wanted to give the community, the board, an update with respect to that question that was out there. This evening, we're going to have a couple presentations. Our mathematics presentation with Marge, Mike, and Allison, and then Joe and I will do our budget presentation. Just a couple reminders to the community. We said to Parents Square Out, tomorrow is early dismissal for parent-teacher conference. There's the art show tomorrow at the Desmond Fish Library, starting at 5:30. Our students' art is amazing, so please come and support them. And again, thank you, Mr. Young, for all your work and making sure this show happened. Art is very special to us, and we thank you for your leadership there. Also, this weekend, Joe and I will be doing an informal community budget discussion presentation. That is a Saturday, 10 a.m., right here. So bring your coffee, bring your questions, and Joe and I will have a nice dialogue about the budget. Again, on the 25th Parent-Teacher Conferences, Joe and I will again do a live webinar budget presentation on April 2nd at 8 p.m. And lastly, and I just saw them rehearsing this evening, April 3rd and 4th, mark it in your calendar, 7 p.m., our musical performance. And we're really looking forward to that. And the students are really excited to present. So that concludes my report, and I take any questions if you have them.
I have one question regarding the sign.
Yes.
In terms of the process for the board, do you want us to all sort of send in our thoughts? We have the design from the weekly update, maybe get an idea of which one everyone prefers, send it in, And we'll go from there. Do you want to add it as a discussion to a future meeting? I just want to sort of gauge both you and the board as to what is most helpful to keep this project moving forward.
Right, I think what we can do is, I've shared the board the different renderings. If you have questions, send them to me and we can have a board discussion if you want about which design you think will work, or if you have questions about any of the materials, pricing, anything like that, we can share. As we told, the charge of this committee was not to make the final decision, but we can also share with you what their recommendations were as well.
Apologies for being late, sorry. But just a question that I missed when you introduced this, the design. Were you able, I know that we were reaching back out to the artists to see if there's any follow-up questions. Were they reached?
They were reached,
Okay.
and thank Mr. Young for that.
Okay.
We had some questions. We wanted to make sure that the parameters of it, with all students were involved in the creation of the art in one way, shape, or form. And one potential artist did revise their approach to say, okay, I could do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, well, on to our future discussion. Thank you.
Is the musical performance the school play musical?
Yes.
Singing in the rain.
They were singing and they were using long rulers as umbrellas as props today. Just, that's where we're at with the production.
Sounds exciting. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to keep going then if there's no other questions and move on to board communications and presentation. We will begin with our Envision Math Program update and presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Allison, Ms. Giuliano, Ms. Roman.
Hi. All right, excited to talk about math? Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm Allison, and I have with me two amazing teachers. I have Mr. Roman, who is our middle school mathematics teacher, and the fabulous Marge Giuliano, who is one of our second grade teachers. So thank you so much for joining us tonight to share your enthusiasm for our math program and for explaining how our mathematics program works here at Garrison. So I am going to start by just reviewing the agenda quickly. So today's presentation, we will tie back to the vision of a graduate. You will hear about how this program and all supplements are used with our students. We're going to talk a little bit about assessments and how our kids are doing. And we'll give you a classroom example that Marge will review. We'll talk about some program features tonight. And Mike will share with you a little bit about acceleration in 7th grade and in 8th grade. And then we'll uncover some of the needs and some of the adjustments that we're making to our mathematics program based on the 4 years that we're now using the program. So we've uncovered a lot. And also Mike Roman will share with you, and also Mark will share with you, some of the supplements that we have carefully selected to align with the next gen learning standards, and also that align with the Envision's mathematics as well. So we always talk about our vision of a graduate, and this is our compass and our guiding force. And so our mathematics program, although this was adopted right before we really fleshed out all the details of a vision of a graduate, our math program really does align beautifully with many of the skills and dispositions that you see here. In particular, of course, the foundational literacies, building math fluency, and procedural math, algorithms, again, communication and expression, with ensuring that our students have opportunities throughout the lessons and the units to communicate their mathematical thinking, lots of opportunities for creative expression and critical thinking. So there's opportunities that Marge will share with you where students are building and creating their own word problems, for example. And the program also, I think, nicely, it's created in a way that I think appeals to many demographics. There's diverse characters. Kids can really see themselves within the program throughout the duration of the program, pre-K through 8th grade. So we believe that it really is diverse in nature. And then again, opportunities for lots of curiosity continued from pre-K all the way up through 8th grade. The kids are becoming more and more curious about how mathematics works in the real world. So the program and all of our supplements focus on conceptual understanding, before we're really getting into the rote memorization of mathematical facts. So that's a real emphasis, again, pre-K all the way through 8th grade. There's tons of problem-solving strategies, and Marge is really going to walk you through some of those strategies, but this ensures that kids really understand that there's more than one way to solve a problem, and there are efficient ways to solve a problem. And then over time, children become proficient and experienced enough to then select like, this strategy I know is going to really work well in this, world mathematical problem. And then, of course, the real world connections. This is where math becomes, I think, really fun for kids. And I keep saying math is fun because for me, it was really challenging as a child because I learned mathematics through rote memorization and just algorithm and procedures. But I really believe that this math program really taps into, deeper levels of understanding. And again, makes really, I think, nice attempts. And it makes they have an unbelievable amount of examples for real world connections. In particular, there's a section in the program called Pick a Project. The Pick a Project is hands-on, almost like project-based learning for some of those Pick a Projects, but again, it goes like a deeper dive into the concepts. The program also offers lots of assessments throughout. So when a teacher is delivering a lesson, right, there's like a mid-check lesson assessment. There is the end of the lesson assessment. There is a mid-topic assessment, and then an end-of-topic assessment. There's also benchmarks that's layered throughout. Again, there's Success Maker, which is adaptive practice, which also gives lots of different data points as well. So looking at the progress monitoring and the formative and summative assessments paired with other assessments such as your state testing, such as STAR assessments, and looking at like the bigger picture gives us a more comprehensive overview of how kids are performing mathematically. This right here is a snapshot of our STAR growth report, and you can see that right now you can see on one side it's measuring the achievement and whether or not kids are proficient, and then you're looking at the growth, how much growth kids are making. So there's two blue circles. You can see there's a middle school circle and an elementary circle. ES is elementary, and you can see that the kids are falling right now. And this assessment, and we looked at this data, was around February-ish. And you can see that the kids are making steady, typical growth, we want to see them move toward that upper right quadrant where kids are having high growth and high achievement. That's always naturally like the goal, right? But some kids are making lots of growth, but they're not quite yet proficient, but we also want to celebrate that growth as well. I think it's really important for us to, really look at this data individually. Of course, we look at it as globally too, as a cohort, but then again, individually, so that we are really looking at those bright spots for kids who might not be proficient quite yet and are getting there. So this is a snapshot, and we're using this to look at cohorts and to also look at individual growth. This also paired with other assessments, gives us opportunities to tease out where there's areas of strength, where there's areas of needed growth, and any skill gaps, and then helps us to create any instructional plans. So I'm going to pass this on to Marge because Marge will share with you some strategies and an example on how we try to move kids in the continuum of growth. Marge.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the strategies that this program uses, but before, to be completely honest with you all, I wasn't happy when they first brought this up and said we're going to change our math program. I am like a creature of habit. I was like, why are they coming to change things? But then they came, Allison had good reasoning for the change. And one of the biggest things was consistency. And coming from where I came from, the charter world in the city, I literally fell in love with this program.
the strategies that they teach kids is amazing. And I love the fact that they give kids multiple ways to approach a problem and really think about the numbers in the problem versus just solving a problem. So it just really allows children just to see a problem and approach it depending on the numbers that are in there. And I think that's just so great because it allows for that flexibility and for kids to be efficient math thinkers. And that's what you really want. It also develops fluency. There's so much consistency across the program. Me as a second grade teacher, it'll introduce a problem, a less complex problem. So it's more approachable for the kids early in the beginning, and then it comes back again. And then it's more complex, but the kids aren't scared because they've seen this type of problem before. The numbers are just bigger. So it just also does a great job of raising like the confidence of students. But when I tell you that this program, your child is gonna leave with a strong sense of number, it really is doing that in this program. And one example is the standard algorithm versus this open number line. And I want you guys to really look at this, because if a child who doesn't have a strong sense of number, they're going to see 110 minus 98, and they're gonna just go straight to the standard algorithm. But a child with a strong sense of number, and this is what this program helps, they're going to create a mental open number line in their head. They're gonna look at that number, they're gonna see that these numbers are close together. I can just do a couple of jumps and I can find the distance between the numbers to solve the problem mentally. And that's amazing. I think it's awesome.
Yes.
So another thing to keep in mind is the community investment in an Envision program adoption provided. So it aligns to the next, I'm not gonna read all these down for you, I'm just gonna focus on a few of them. And the ones I want you to just particularly look at is the scope and sequence to avoid gaps. Because this program is being practiced across all grades in the school, my second graders come to me so ready. Like I can hit the ground running with them. And because the program is so consistent with its model, my kids know about guided practice. They know about the independent practice. They know about the higher order learning questions. They know what to expect when they come to me. And that's because the first grade teachers are consistently teaching the program, the kindergarten teacher, the pre-K. So it's really exciting that we're in a school where there's all this consistency. Another thing I love about the program, the lessons are long, but it's really more so the math block is long. So it really gives enough time for practice and for me to assess for learning. So if you look here where it says resources for reteaching and enrichment, I can touch all levels of students in this program, and it's all there for me. So I don't have to spend all this time planning and creating things. It's all there. I just literally like print it out, and then I go over it with my different groups, and everyone is being taught and working in the classroom while I'm working with different students. So I think that's pretty awesome. Finally, another part that I really like is the last part over here where it provides multiple opportunities for guided and independent practice. As I said before, guided practice is consistent across every single lesson. The kids know that in this part of the lesson, they're gonna open up their math workbooks and I'm going to work with them and I'm gonna guide them through the problem. So even if you have a student in your class that was watching the lesson and going through the lesson with you and they weren't getting it, they are assured that Mrs. Giuliano is gonna do guided practice with them, with the whole group, and that sometimes takes a lot of the pressure off, and then I can send them off if they feel ready, and there's always opportunities for a small group. So with that said, I just love it.
And now I'm going to pass it to Mr. Roman.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to speak a little bit to acceleration in 7th and 8th grade. We have the opportunity to provide 7th and 8th grade students with accelerated math starting in 7th grade, accelerated math 7, and then 8th grade we switch over to algebra. So the beauty of this is that we get to have our 7th and 8th grade students get the proper amount of challenge that they need and also the attention that they need. So right away in accelerated 7th grade, students get to encounter more challenging concepts earlier in the regular curriculum. They get increased rigor, so problems are more complex, they need multi-step calculations, and it really requires them to have a deeper understanding of the content and use their critical thinking. The most important thing here is the pace of learning, because 7th grade students will still get the same math, it's just the speed in which they get it and the time in which they get it. Lessons move through material at a much quicker pace in the accelerated class. That's to make sure we cover more content within the same amount of time, the school year. Lastly, even though we're moving faster in accelerated math, the curriculum still is emphasizing strong foundational concepts through visual learning and problem-based activities. And this is with the goal of getting some of our kids that are ready for it, a high school credit at the end of 8th grade.
So empowering student progress in mathematics. So with this program, there is, I'm not gonna say it's a program, it's a school. There's ongoing data review. And what I mean by that is when we come in like say the first couple of weeks of school, there's already assessments that are in place for the children to take. And then, like, I would say within a couple of weeks, I'm already getting a call from Mr. Nafrio or an email saying, hey, Margie, these are the kids I have on my radar. This is what I'm thinking. Let's meet. So early on, there's all this review of data, and it happens ongoing. We share our data with the support teachers that are helping us, and also with the principal. So everyone, we're constantly looking at the numbers, and if we're seeing dips, we're thinking about how can we support the students. And then we have the great supplemental resources that are also very helpful, that are already in the program. So like I said, they align with every lesson and with the assessments, so that it just works out great for us.
One of the things that I wanted to mention tonight is we're doing a lot of work with the science of reading. And that work that we're doing with our teachers is really helping our work in mathematics as well. So there are 6 pillars in the science of reading, and a few of them really back into mathematics. So when math is reading, there's a ton of word problems and a lot to sift through for kids. Math is rich in language, and it's rich in vocabulary. So the work that we're doing currently in science of reading just backs in beautifully with this work in mathematics. So I did want to make note of that. And then naturally, everything we do, again, really looks through, I think, a strengths-based lens as we're looking at students in terms of their skills and their dispositions. We look at the whole child. We make reference to the vision of a graduate, and using all of this data and our magnificent teachers who are back there and their knowledge and expertise. Again, we're just building programs for kids so that kids are succeeding. The program also has, some things that are pain spots, right? Because no program is perfect. One of the things that all of our teachers have agreed on is that it's so language intensive. There's tons of reading, tons of vocabulary. So there's naturally an emphasis now on how we're going to kind of tackle these pain spots within the program. So somebody like Marissa Gargaro, who's our speech and language pathologist, she works very closely with all of our teachers, K through 8, and she will dissect the math unit and pull out, for example, all the math, language, and vocabulary that the kids might need, and then front load that vocabulary and reinforce it. So these are ways in which we're working, collectively with our support team to help students. Some of the fluency practice drills that, to help to build some of those foundational skills are lacking. So what do? We went out and we found some great supplements that Mike is going to speak to and Marge will speak to that align with the program and provide that additional fluency practice. Sometimes the layout of the page and parents, a lot of parents are, they see the math workbook and they see that sometimes there might be a lot on a page that needs to be modified. The child might need graph paper, not enough space to work through a problem. So these are some pain spots that the program has, but we have figured out ways to navigate that. And then of course, naturally the pacing of the lessons, it's rigorous, it's fast paced, it's hard. But we we're adjusting as we go along. And Mike and Mark will explain some of the supplements that we're using. We try really hard not to have like a hodgepodge of different supplemental materials. We want it consistent. Like Mark said, consistency is key. We want things to feel familiar. And again, we want to, when you pull too many things from left field and you try to bring it into a program, you can actually do a disservice and create skill gaps. And it's tighter when we're careful. And we plan together on and carefully select these supplements. So I'm gonna have Mark and Mike speak to that.
Okay, so I'll start off with iExcel. I'm a very big advocate for iExcel. It's aligned perfectly to our math curriculum. You can get it down to the exact lesson that we did during the day, and students can focus in on whatever skill they need. This is my number one recommendation to go to for any students looking to close their gaps. And again, because it's not random at all, it's really synced well to the math program. It has some nice features. It also has skills for procedural fluency, but it doesn't just have that. It has conceptual understanding skills as well, some word problems. So really whatever you're looking for, it's there. It's really easy to connect to Google Classroom. So that's probably the resource I use the most in my classroom to supplement. We also rolled out algebra for goblins this year, just for 8th grade math. It's a new program that is AI, so we kind of rolled it out for the 8th graders just as a trial run, and it's working really well for the higher level math. It adapts to them and it walks them through. The AI is really amazing. It walks them through each problem. They can even type like, I have no idea what's going on, and it'll give them a model, and some of them have, and it'll give them a model and walk them through step by step. So that's really fascinating to me, and I've heard they're rolling it down to 7th and 6th grade too, so maybe next year we can explore that. And then Success Maker, I'm a really big fan of this as well, a little more recently. And my favorite thing about this is that students are getting mixed review, so it's spiraling concepts back from September, making the load for later in the year to remember those old concepts a little lighter on the students. And it's also adaptive, so just adapting to the needs of the students. Those are always things I'm looking for with resources.
So when it comes to fluency practice, the program does lack in that. They have one, but it's not very helpful for us as teachers because, like, for example, the 2nd grade standard for adding and subtracting, you need to be able to add and subtract up to 20 within 6 seconds. And there's no real good way to measure that with the program, but with reflex math and extra math, it does a lot of that quickness for you, so the kids are able to do it, because that should be rote, and also with multiplication and division facts, that should be rote. So that is a very helpful program. Reflex is more gamified, extra math is more like online flashcards. So it's pretty cool. And then we have like teacher created practice activities, and that's where we can be creative as teachers. We can have fun with numbers, adding and subtracting, tie it in with arts and crafts and different like models, so that the kids are still practicing their math skills, but they're doing it in a different way.
And we hope that you enjoyed Marge and Mike's explanation of math, and hope you learned a lot about our program, and we're opening it up for questions.
Thank you guys very much. Very informative, especially for those of us who weren't on the board when this was adopted. And to that, can you just give us some background about when we adopted this program and sort of what about Envision, why did we pick Envision compared to others? And that tailors into sort of my next question, which is, are there other gaps? You did mention, some of the weaknesses or the supplements, but are there other gaps in this program or curriculum that you guys see?
So about 4 years ago, well, 5 years ago when I first started here, we noticed that there were lots of different programs that were happening within the school. Teachers were following the New York State standards, they were using modules, and they were doing their very best with the materials that they had in their hand. But we wanted to create some consistency. So we put together a group of teachers that were eager to continue to explore different mathematic programs. We did a ton of research together. We narrowed it down to, I think it was 3 or 4 that were pretty all consistently we felt that would meet our needs. And then we piloted them. And so we made sure that we were piloting similar lesson types. So it would be like place value, let's say, and we're going to compare now each program, but we're only going to look at place value and see and compare program to program. And then at that point, we created also a rubric where the teachers had to score and rate each program. And then in the end, we had deep dive conversation using the rubric that was developed to say, okay, like now let's sort of vote using the rubric and be true and assess using this tool. And in the end, we all felt collectively that Envisions would meet our needs based on, at that time, given that there's next gen learning standards to consider and a lot of just programmatic gaps within the system. And we said, let's just give it a go. And from that point on, it's been a learning curve. We had a lot of professional development our first year of adoption, and the second year had some additional professional development, but most of it was front-loaded in that first year. And it was really, I think, a hard rollout because this program is rigorous. It's really hard. When you have student entry points, so let's say, for example, our current 8th grade, they were 5th graders. When you start this program as a 5th grader, you're like, what the heck is going on here? Because there's such structure to the program, and like we said, it's hard, lots of strategies, so that's a tough entry point. So now as 8th graders, of course they're better at the program, but now when you look at our younger students who have, years of experience in this program, we are now at, I think, the perfect time to really assess the effectiveness, I think, of the program now that we're in year 4. Especially now we're adding components like Success Maker, which is a complement to Envisions. It's part of the program that we now we're ready for full implementation. We tried Success Maker, I want to say, a year and a half ago, but it was glitchy. It just was. It just wasn't really, and that was a gap. We were like, we're not ready to use this. It's just going to frustrate teachers and kids. So we put it on the back burner. We reintroduced it this year, and we're getting a much better result. So I'm tapping into teachers in the hallway, like, how's that Success Maker? Oh, well, I'm not quite sure yet. And now people are feeling really good about it. I think that's going to be a game changer with helping to close some of the gaps because it's adaptive, it's tightly aligned, and it spirals constantly to previous concepts. It really it's highly differentiated. So I think that's going to be, I'm really excited to see how the day is going to look like at the end of the year when we do that third benchmark to really see year 4 what that looks like for our kids. Other pain spots, I'll turn to the teachers if they want to speak to any other areas in the program that could be gappy, but it's, I think we're doing a pretty good job of filling them as we're identifying and kind of talking constantly about math, but I'll turn it over to you guys. What do you think?
I don't, besides the ones that we spoke about, I don't see any big ones, but I will say, you have some kids, there are some parts that are computer based, but there are some kids that don't necessarily want to be on the screen. So for example, you have the spiraling in Success Maker, there's also daily review sheets that you can also print out that they can work on. So this program is like checking off everything.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things that we put kids for unbelievable at math, right? And they're like, all right, next, I need more. And the pickup project, I think, has been a game changer for some kids as well. I think they really enjoy digging into that math. It's more like some of it can be more project-based, but definitely real hands-on. It pushes their thinking a little further.
Is there an ongoing professional development sort of cycle for this program?
So right now we are actually, we use all our PD. We just had a PD in the beginning of this year on Success Maker because that was that missing link there. So we had that, and I think the program, we have thinking in 2 years, I want to say 2027 is when we have to consider whether or not we want to continue with Envision. But currently right now, we have not had any more Envision training.
Ultimately, obviously, test scores are, so we're gonna go.
Yeah.
Test scores are the the way you measure this thing, but I'm just curious, you talked about the 8th graders started this in 5th grade. Obviously, it's just well documented that kids who take algebra in 8th grade and start on that path are more successful ultimately in high school, getting into college. Do you see this program helping more of our kids take Regents math in 8th grade? Eventually, is this something you believe will push more kids ahead into that track?
Yes, why not? Absolutely. Like, I mean, that's my opinion. We are always pushing our kids. I think we have now, when I first came here, it was sort of like an equal split of kids. Like, it was like, we have 10 kids in accelerated and 7 kids, and now we're like, how many kids are in accelerated?
Now we're at 16 and 10 in 8th grade.
So 16, so we're always looking for our kids to push themselves. We have criteria, you know, and the criteria obviously is like quantitative, but that doesn't mean we do take in consideration all that soft data. It's so important. We want kids to push themselves, set goals. If you are a high 80 student and the criteria is 92, we're gonna say go for it. We're gonna say go for it. And we think that this program can really help kids to get there and have more kids get it, have those opportunities to advance. And if they don't advance, that's okay too. You know, like, we never want to make the other kids who are not advancing feel, I should be keeping up with my peers. We want that, but it's okay. I think they're gonna do just fine. Any other questions?
Just curious, and this might be a little off topic, but does it include any, or is there an option to include anything that's sort of like early coding or computer engineering or any of the, I mean, I know that's only sort of tangentially mathematics, but in terms of like algorithms or logic, is that addressed at all?
I haven't
seen anything for the middle school level, no.
That's a great question too.
Okay, cool.
All right, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the teachers' time, especially for coming out and sharing your thoughts on this program and your feedback. So, and thank you for the rescheduling due to the snow. I really appreciate your flexibility as well. So,
They're amazing,
thank
and
you so
all of our
much.
teachers back there, our
Thank you,
whole
team.
school were amazing. They're amazing.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the second discussion presentation. So up next, we have a school lunch discussion. So first, I wanted to thank the Budget Advisory Committee and Jennifer for their work on this topic. I think we can all acknowledge that we are further than we've ever gotten, and that is in large part due to what your committee did. So a huge thank you. So we're going to begin this discussion tonight with a review of what we've learned from the BAC, or Budget Advisory Committee, and the subsequent research completed by our administrators. Then we're going to discuss some outstanding questions for the board, including how much of the program the board feels the district should subsidize, while recognizing that we still have a lot of unknowns, including the landed cost of the meals. But I want everyone to keep that question in the back of their minds, because when we say, how much is in the budget, that's our decision. So we need to start really thinking in those terms. The goal of tonight's discussion is to reach a consensus on including a budget transfer to the school lunch fund in the draft budget for the kitchen upgrade and the startup costs. And then also, if we are including funds for subsidizing it, that would also need to be a transfer to the school lunch fund, which we have conveniently drained almost to zero per the auditor's request, which I find interesting. We have to switch over. Anyway, with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Craig, who has prepared a few slides.
Yeah, I want to thank all the members of the BAC, right? That's the new vote, it's the BAC.
The back.
So there's a couple things. We have gotten a little bit farther than the district has in the past with a potential district to partner with that maybe be able to supply us food. We also are, thanks to the outreach of members of the Budget Advisory Committee, there are some potential vendors that may supply us. Either way, some of those things are have costs associated. But let's just talk about some of the one-time startup costs. If we are going to be successful in cross-contracting with another district's food service, there are certain things we have to do in our current kitchen setup. One is there's kitchen upgrades of servery, warming ovens, things you have to do if you're gonna bring in a bunch of meals and keep them at certain temps. The district has explored this before. Joe has got updated numbers for us. So if we look at the stuff we need to replace in the kitchen, not cooking from scratch, but being able to serve according to the Department of Health, there are certain things we need to upgrade our kitchen. All in all, the cost for that, updated costs are about $80,000, and that also include some plumbers for install for gas, some removal of equipment. The other thing is we need a point of sale system in order to account for all monies that come in and for families to be able to purchase food. So the hardware for that could be around $5,000. And so the startup cost just off the ground is about $85,000. The other thing is that we're gonna serve multiple meals on multiple lunch periods. We're gonna need staff for that. Most school districts hire hourly employees. Our thinking is about 4 hours a day, we would need 2 employees. They would also have to go and pick up the food for us and transport. That is something that we'd have to do. But we're looking at 2 hourly employees, around $25 an hour in order to attract people to do 4 hours out of their day. We think that's an hourly rate that will work. So if you add that, multiply by the number of days we serve, you add FICA, Social Security, ERS, we're looking at about $44,000, about $44,500 a year just to staff it. We also have free and reduced students that are qualified for free and reduced. We have to subsidize their cost. We don't know what the landed cost will be for the meal, but let's just say it's $5, which is what some districts kind of charge staff for meals. We're looking at about $18,000 for free and reduced for the year. And then every year you have to, a license agreement for your point of sales program. The cost for one that we were looking at, for example, is about $1,500. So our reoccurring cost for a year, just not including whatever it costs for us to buy the meals from a vendor or another school district, is about $69,000 a year. I'll stop there because that's kind of what we know. If you want to discuss that at all, or Jenny.
I just have a question. With the reoccurring costs, would that include help for Friday pizzas, or does that
No, we would not include help for Friday pizzas. Right now, we all volunteer. We have some 8th graders, there's some parent volunteers. This is also under the premise that we would continue the practice of Pizza Fridays, which we all know and love, and our kids really love it, and it is a good cause. It does raise money for our 8th grades, but it does not include staffing for
So
Pizza Fridays.
I would suggest that we include at least one of those hourly employees to be there on Friday with all the new equipment and managing the kitchen. And so we should probably up that a little in our discussions because you would want some supervision of all the new equipment and everything that's being used.
The equipment even being used for pizza lunch?
No, I don't know that they do delivered in waves and hot, so we wouldn't have to rewarm stuff. It wouldn't come in like trays that we'd have to dish out. So theoretically, we wouldn't have to use the equipment, any of the
I
equipment.
just personally would, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but to have someone who, if they're running the kitchen 4 days a week, to then leave it on a Friday to make sure it's ready for what they need for Monday.
We also have plenty of Fridays where I have a person who's currently running the Pizza Friday program, but the volunteers don't show up.
And would any of our staff that is doing Pizza Friday currently welcome, a professional?
I think they would like to be relieved to the
Yeah.
jobs that they actually have.
I mean, I think if we're gonna talk about this, we should include
Sure.
at least one person.
And I think as long as it's not, that is the biggest fundraiser for the 8th grade.
Yeah.
I think, so as long as there's no money coming back out of that to pay for this person.
Right, I think we should add it to, you're suggesting, add it to.
Add it to the reoccurring cost.
So one person on a
So
Pizza Friday.
two additional, and maybe you don't need all 4 hours, maybe you only need someone there for 2 hours. I don't know how many hours the Pizza Friday goes, even at 4 hours, it's an extra $100 a week. So times 40 weeks is an extra $1,000. Or is it 38 weeks technically, serving food?
Pizza Friday doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen on some Fridays, I just think it would be,
If we did feel like we couldn't do it 4 days a week, let's just say, or at least maybe in the first year, not cover all 4 days, but 2, is that possible? Would that just half the cost of employees, or?
Yeah, I mean, if you did 2 days a week, and that's what, and we'll get to it in a minute in terms of what what our community would like, you could certainly reduce it to 2 days a week to purchase food from another school district.
My concern though is, once we set up a contract with another interested district, going through the administrative cost, the startup cost of all of that, we might as well go, I think, to 4 days if we can, just to keep them interested in us too.
It might be.
Yeah, but I mean, just based on if we don't know what the cost of the food will be for parents, there may be a calculation in some parents' mind, well, if I can't spend X on school lunch, I'd rather have 2 school lunch days, and pay a little bit more, let's say, for that, and have 2 days where I do it from home.
I think when they also see the menu, it might be kind of like this day or something.
Right, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
what the flexibility is. I would rather have 4 days, of course, I think we all would.
And the survey went out that will ask so we'll get a little bit, when did that close again?
April 2nd,
So no,
4 p.m.
Good reminder for everyone to fill
Please
that
fill
out,
out.
in terms of, so I think some of the stuff we're talking about though, it looks, if we're talking about maybe $5 for a meal before we've added the meal in, is that where we're getting to?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
like
if we, absolutely, so there's some unknown cost variables that I want to just share with the community and with the board. We don't know what the actual meal cost is gonna be to us from either a vendor or from another school district's food service program. We don't know if there's any contractual or administrative fees, right? If another school district is gonna produce more meals, do they need more staff? Are they gonna have to pay their staff? Are they gonna have to pay their food service director a little bit more to manage another account? We don't know that yet. And we also don't know what our actual daily meal sales will be. So we have to project a certain number per sales to know what the delta is between what people are paying and what the district is subsidizing. We just don't know that yet. So we can make some assumptions. We can make some assumptions, assuming we sell about 75 meals for 4 days a week. We can extrapolate, there's 39 weeks in next year's school calendar that we'd be serving meals. So that's 11,700 meals. You divide that by this. Now, I'm not talking about the one-time startup cost, but you divide it by the reoccurring costs. We're looking at 69,000 divided by 11,700 meals. We land at before we even purchase any food item, we land at a cost per meal of those 75 per week, per day. You're landing at a $5.89 cost to each meal if it was budget neutral, if we didn't subsidize any part of it. So just to give the board and the community a sense of well, what does it cost to continue this program? Sans the food, that's the cost per meal, making some assumption.
do other school districts generally take losses on their school lunch programs or?
It's mixed.
It's mixed.
It depends on whether or not they're participating in the federal program. This would not be participating in a federal program for complexity concerns. And it also depends upon the relative wealth of the school and how much they would get as a reimbursement. And then the other thing that it also depends very heavily on is, are your kitchen staff, are they all part-time people? Are they eligible for health insurance? Those things really change the numbers, those variable costs.
If you go through and look, if you read Category Hills or some of the other audit reports, and you'll see.
I'm not doing
Why don't you summarize for us?
They're taking without staffing costs, I think about $100,000 per year in the school lunch fund line. So that's not including, I can't extrapolate out without really watching all their budget presentations. I haven't done that recently.
I mean, it's been my experience, I don't know about Dr. Stoll, that most of the districts I've worked in the lunch program has always run a deficit.
Yeah, many do. Again, I think as Joe said, it depends on what your reimbursables are. It really depends on the demographics, the wealth of the district, and the rate in which you get reimbursed, and your certain how you staff, and your contracts with if you're using an Aramark or a Chartwell, what your contract is with it.
But I would anticipate if we were going to offer lunch program here, it would run a deficit.
You would have to, particularly that you're not, that we wouldn't be a federal school lunch program in this, you're not getting any reimbursement, so yeah, you have to run at a loss, or you can just imagine what a meal cost would be and no one would buy it. So for us to do it, it would have to be a budgetary supplement from the district to make it probably feasible for parents to buy a meal. So we do have some next steps. We're not there yet, and we may be farther than we've been before because we have some people willing to at least entertain us with the discussion. So we need to continue to work with whether we go with an outside vendor or whether we go with another school district that has a food service program. We need to determine the feasibility. Can they supply us what we need? We need to know what is the landing at meal cost so that we can understand that to do some calculation of what we will have to subsidize to make it reasonable for families. We also have to account for any associated fees, unanticipated costs we haven't thought about yet. We did send out a survey, thank you for mentioning it. It is going out to gauge interest, and I want to thank the Budget Advisory Committee, Peter and Jen for helping me put that together, and for the other members for their insight on that. We want to gauge interest with that survey. We want to understand pricing parameters. What's the limit parents are willing to kind of, pay, and how often would they pay for that meal? We also want to make sure that we're not bringing in foods that our families don't want. So what are their expectations of the types of foods we're bringing in, the quality of food that we're bringing in? We want to understand our communities, for their children, any medical or dietary restrictions that we need to account for. And we need to kind of try to project an average sales per week so that we can budget accordingly to hit whatever supplement we want to subsidize, we can kind of hit those marks. So that's kind of our next steps in this process. And, again, I want to thank the Budget Advisory Committee and Joe for all their hard work on getting us to where we are today.
So back to sort of our question, we have some numbers in terms of the kitchen where there are ways to go on whether this actually happens. What are we thinking in terms of adding some of this as a budget transfer to the school lunch fund now? Or are we too far out? I'll just share that one of my thoughts is that we've come so far with this, farther than we have. I would hate to see the discussion sort of end now. So if this is what's getting it going, keeping it going, I don't want to come back to it. But what tends to happen is you come back in the fall and you're like, all right, for this year's budget, we'll start again. But then you've sort of lost the contact, lost the conversation with all the partners. Maybe the districts who are interested now, who shall not be named, won't be interested in the fall in working with us. So I hate to lose the momentum, but at the same time, I struggle with the idea of increasing taxes on people on such an unknown. With this program, we don't know what we're asking them for or if it's even feasible. So that's sort of my thinking on where I'm at.
For me, I think we need to get the results of the survey back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we're really blind right now. Like everyone's like, everybody wants school lunch, but does everyone want school lunch at $8? We don't know that. So, and everybody want chicken nuggets. Like, I just think we're really blind. So I know in the budget presentation, it is discussed, and we talked about how we could do this, but if we get the survey back and it's the loser, I don't see how we get forward. So I think we need until April 2nd. And then after that, I mean, we don't have to lock in the budget till the 5th. I always do that. But maybe that was last year.
So I think even if we don't end up with an option for 4 days a week by partnering with someone, we might very well be able to end up with a 1 or 2 day a week option that might be us not needing a point of sale system because it might be a direct, I don't know if we can do that, a direct pay to the vendor.
Well, that's actually another question that I was going to raise, which is sort of a twofold about the POS system. I think they're actually good to have. But question number one is, are we looking at a mobile POS so that we can use it beyond just the cafeteria, right? So can it be used at other school events where we're selling stuff or can raise other funds, right? So is it something that we can, use for multiple purposes? I know most POSs can do that, but I don't know if that's the one we're looking at, so I'm just throwing that out there. But then the second question is, I'm all for cashless. I don't know how that works with a K-5, like my kids don't have Apple Pay, right?
So, well, there's a system for that they've built in, because one of the biggest factors that we want to be mindful of is making sure that no one who is receiving free lunch is identifiable at any point in this process. So I really want to caution against moving to anything where we're moving any type of cash through.
Yeah.
There's also really hard to account for where those funds go, and I don't want to mess with that, but I think one of the nice things about having people paying in advance is it's hard to see where that payment's coming from. And Joe, can you speak to the point of sale system?
Yes, so we're looking at one of the ones that's kind of like an industry standard that is through Heartland Payment Systems, which is the forward-facing or the parent-facing thing is called My School Bucks. And it's a very common platform that schools use. You can use it for other payments, and essentially it works like Easy Pass or other things where you can set up like an increment to notify you when it's at a certain level, and you increase funds to it with a transfer out of a card or a bank account. So then it would just be the student, when they come up, it's just matching the number, entering the number, and that's all the person at the point of sale does. And that insulates the student or anyone else knowing which ones are getting free lunches and which ones are not. So that it does all that, and it can be used for other things, like if you have to give money for a field trip or things like that. It has the capability of doing that as well.
So like if we had so for field day or whatever, if we're selling pizza at it to raise money for something, can we wheel it out there and use it for that?
You can, yes.
And it would separate it out so that when we audit the funds, it would know what goes into school lunch fund versus another fund.
Yeah, you set up what kind of collection that you're doing, and it can go in all sorts of different buckets. That is a feature of these kinds of software.
And it has, even the person at the register doesn't know if the student is receiving free or reduced lunch. And it'll also pop up if the student has an allergy, so the person knows the student coming through the line, they'll say peanut allergy, so that you know if you are serving something else to which you have.
So
It really is standard.
So the survey results, sounds pretty tight, with the finalizing of the budget. Is that enough time to have a discussion, or should we try to, I know we've sent out the survey already, but why have it be out so long? I mean, most people probably responded the first week or the first day. Get this thing.
Usually you want to survey out long enough that you can remind people when you don't get enough responses. Yes, you're going to get the people that are eager to respond at first, but you have to remind people of the survey. So our thinking was, if we did it too tight, we might miss some people, and we want to see, if we only have in a week and a half 89 respondents, we know that's not indicative of the whole sample that we need to get, so we can send out reminders for people to do it. It's a little tight to do it in a week or a week and a half, and then try to extrapolate the data, look at it. We can look at it as we go along, but we want to encourage as much data as we can, and when you send out a survey, if you make the time turnaround too tight, people could be dealing with sickness, moving kids around, and not be able to respond and miss a whole subset of your population.
And also, I mean, the survey gets at questions like what people would be willing to pay and how often you would use the program, right? And the question before the board right now is whether we want to authorize the transfer of funds which would be from fund balance, correct?
Well, it
Or
could
the school program.
be really either. I mean, it's whether if you increase the levy, it comes from the levy. If you use it from fund balance, it'll come from fund balance. Our current budget is already looking at pulling a significant amount of our undesignated fund balance, but we have a lot of undesignated fund balance currently. So it's another area where we could say, if it doesn't happen, then all it does is staying under the fund balance. Like, we just don't do the transfer.
The
Yeah, so
only, the only challenge is, let's say something doesn't come to fruition and we tax the levy, right? We tax people for anticipated cost. If this thing falls apart, we don't get a vendor or a vendor pulls out, we've already gone out with a budget that taxes people for a program. So we could think about, we could, use that fund balance, that if we don't, we're not asking people for money up front. We're using undesignated fund balance that's already above kind of the state's limit. And if we don't use it, it just stays there, and we don't tax people for a program.
Yeah.
But that's the case for anything in the budget.
Yeah, I mean, this is interchangeable with anything else we use fund balance for.
But there's a lot of unknowns with this one that we're not across it. If I had a contract with somebody, we may have a different discussion. Like if I had someone that says, yeah, this is what we'll do, we're ready to do it. The person was supposed to come this week, they had an emergency in their district, so they didn't even come. They're gonna come here and look at our equipment and look at our space and say, I think I can help you, here's how I'm gonna help you. So
If we wanted to say.
Well, I was gonna say that if there's enough time to wait for the survey, I think that's fine, but if not, I would be okay going forward and using fund balance at least the first year, and sort of considering like a pilot almost, because like you said, if we don't use it, it goes back in, and we're not really out and give us a little bit more time then to get multiple bids, maybe if we want on the equipment too. I don't know if that's standard procedure, but maybe there are other options. I know we saw one, but.
So I agree with Peter. I think if we look at next year as a pilot, then using fund balance, because who knows, we might not get it off the ground until November.
And it might fail miserably. We
And it
don't
might
wanna do
fail,
it the
and
next
we might want
year.
to stop it, right?
So then,
But the one thing I do wonder, especially, I've been in a lot of meetings lately where there's talk of if you need equipment, we should be buying it sooner than later because of the concern of potential tariffs. If there's anything that would be helpful to have in the kitchen, regardless of whether or not we had a lunch program, that we might look at doing sooner than later out of this year's.
Are we able to do them? No.
Not-
We need the authorization.
Not for, equipment
Yeah.
purchases are considered a non-contingent expense. So you,
And we don't have any extra money in our equipment. budget.
not a significant amount to make a dent in this list. What I would say is, it is kind of good that the survey is gonna be out a few weeks, because that'll give us a little bit more time to at least have a real discussion on what the landed cost for the food might be, and the possible offerings of what a menu would look like. And, like Greg said, we're gonna have our initial conversation with a potential partner on Friday, so in person, So it's, once that happens and we can kind of touch base with what's possible and what's likely, then we can have a better idea of how much subsidy would be needed to get the meal to a target price that the board wants to sell the meals.
Have we, have we also been pushing on the outside vendor route? I know we were kind of working with the district, because that's would obviously,
So
seems
so
to be
the,
obviously the
yeah.
cheaper one, but are we also trying to get hard numbers on the vendor?
Well, so the estimates I had so far from outside vendors was just for what they would have to charge us would be between $7 and $9 a meal.
Yeah, the other thing with that, we still need servers, right? We still need
Yeah.
people to,
Right.
yeah. We may not need all the equipment,
Right.
but we would need servery, placed in trays, someone to clean up, like, so we still would need some of those reoccurring costs, even if we went with the vendor.
And like, as we discussed in the committee, we had spoken to about 5 different, more like delis and things, but, I was saying to Sarah the other day, it could be a restaurant. I mean, if we put out, if Joe and Greg put out an RFP, a restaurant might respond. But I would anticipate that those costs would be much higher than the costs coming from the school.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the mind that, and this might be splitting hairs, but I'm of the mind that the kitchen needs to be upgraded anyway, right? And if the money's there and we can designate it, and to your point, Sarah, like, why slow down our progress? Like, that needs to be done no matter what. So part of me feels like a kitchen upgrade is a good thing anyway, bringing it out of the, 1970s, so.
I just want to be clear though, this won't upgrade it to be used. You won't be able to cook in it still.
No, I
It will
understand.
only be service.
No, I understand. And I mean, that's fine though, because we have other events here where, on Fridays, there's pizza. On, we do international night, right? It'd be nice to be able to keep some food hot if someone drops it off early or whatever. There's lots of different other, times and places where we can use that equipment. So part of me feels like that's just kind of necessary anyway. And if the money's there, great. And this is the part where splitting hairs is maybe that goes to fund balance, and you can tell me I'm crazy here, but then if we get to a point where, to Ken's point, that we need to hear from the community on the survey, then because those are recurring costs and they're comparatively lower, I personally don't see the problem with adding those to the levy if they're recurring, but I don't know if that gets too complicated. So that's the only reason I'm throwing it out there.
I would make the point that this is truly a pilot. None of us have any idea whether it's gonna happen 2 years from now. Like, to put it into the levy, a recurring cost like that, I don't think it's necessary. I think if we're gonna do this, we do it as a pilot, and then we know the costs. We don't know anything. It could be way over budget, and we could be, we know nothing going into this. So baking it into the levy, promising we're gonna do it, I don't think that's the right way.
But if it's successful next year,
Yeah.
to put it in the levy.
Absolutely.
We can have the same discussion.
If I may, I do think that the staff lines coming out of fund balance, it seems like it's something that I've tried to fight against as a board member, is having people who really have to come out of a fund balance as opposed to a base budget. So there's that with respect to the two part-timers. And also, we're gonna talk about the budget, but, next year is very uncertain how much we'll be allowed to ask for in our levy, based on the complicated calculations, plus federal funding. We don't really know if next year we're gonna be able to have room to ask for a little bit more, whereas this year we did have that room. And I'm just throwing it out there as we move forward with the discussion to consider. Unless, Joe, you know something.
Well, what I want to say is, the model as the budget is developed right now, the funds for the kitchen upgrades that it's a non-recurring cost, that is the math is coming out of fund balance. The operating costs, the transfer to the school lunch fund that is supporting the staff, and the other operating costs is out of the budget. So it is budgeted. We did make some adjustments between the last budget and the current budget, and it's included in the budget. So we're not using fund balance for the staffing and the point of sale annual cost.
I think it really comes down to, it's a philosophical question. Should we tax people more this year just in case next year is really bad? I personally don't subscribe to that. I don't think people want us to hold their money for a year, just in case something bad happens. And at the end of the day, we're way over on our fund balance.
Right,
So I think that's
what the fund balance is. It's
right.
Holding people's money.
We have,
Right,
it's
so
all
we're asking them then to hold more of their money just in case something bad happens.
Or spend it and not hold it.
But what is the real question that we're trying to answer here? Because it seems like, so the draft budget currently has the staffing covered.
Yeah.
In the budget.
I mean, we're gonna get into
We
the
have,
budget.
we're using the fund balance for the improvements to the kitchen. So are we?
So
is
it sounds like we have consensus to move ahead with including that transfer to the school lunch fund, and to also, start funding this equipment in the budget. The other question I had, going back a bit, Dusty, this is for you. The budget adoption due date, we have the BOCES meeting, I believe, I'm gonna pull a date out of there, 22nd or 23rd, it's a Tuesday. We don't need to legally adopt our budget until that Wednesday, is that correct? Or, because we could push the the date we adopt, it just pushes us up to the deadline.
It creates a really, really tight window, because then we have deadlines that same week when we have to get absentee
ballots out in the mail.
Got it.
The number.
And you've got to incorporate all those numbers, you've got, obviously, the one thing that comes down to the wire always is who our candidates are too when they turn in.
So the only thing we would be, if we were to say we wanted to proceed with the draft as it is tonight, the only thing we would be baking in would be the salaries of the 2 part-time staff. And if we didn't end up hiring those people, that would just be unallocated funds that would then return to undesignated fund balance at the end of next year, correct?
Yeah, but they're actually both in the same line. At the very end of the budget, there's transfers to other funds. So there's a transfer to capital fund, and there's transfer to school lunch / special aid fund. That's what we have set up in our thing. So if you don't actually make those expenses, you don't transfer to those other funds, and it just comes back as undesignated fund balance at the end of the year.
So I don't see any risk I don't see a significant risk in that. It's not a significant amount of money. I think, obviously, because of the work of the Budget Advisory Committee, we've made significant progress. We have very good leads. I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. I feel like, I totally agree that we want to hear the results of the survey, but to me, it seems like that information we can use to develop the lunch program, figure out pricing. It'll tell us to some extent what the recurring budgetary costs will be in the long term if the program works.
Oh, plus it'll refine the transfer amount. So when you know how much the cost of the meal is going to be, as far as landed here from whoever our supplier is, and what you want to sell it for, that difference has to be added to what the transfer would be.
So I think what we're saying is by the next meeting, when we have that data, everyone should have reviewed it, because we're gonna really need to, that number, like say it ends up being an $11 meal, and we decide to subsidize part of it, the subsidized number has to fold into special funds and go somewhere too, and that could be a rolling amount as to how much.
Could we do, because it's a pilot year, could we do that subsidy out of fund balance and leave the staffing in? It sounds like the staffing is in the base budget, which I'm going to present to us soon, but agree that we'll leave that staffing at that level, and additional funding for the pilot year could come out of fund balance to give us a really good idea of what's going to work and what is it going to cost.
Yeah, well, that's a choice, and we'll be able to kind of tell you what the projections of what that would be. And then how our levy compares to other school districts and what we're seeing out there. Yeah.
And maybe some update on the survey results midpoint, just.
Yeah, if we could drop those into the weekly as we get them, that would be
Absolutely,
great, so we can start
For the
reviewing.
next reminder.
Yeah, and everybody gets a sense then of what we're looking at in terms of a breaking point on cost.
I can do that every Friday and give you
That'd be great.
an update of what the results are of the parental survey.
All right.
And
the quality of food
remind
they
people
want.
to do
I
it.
will remind people to vote, only once though. For household.
Okay, thank you. And as per our amended agenda, I'm going to close then. That's our school lunch discussions and follow-up questions. Thank you all. We're going to go on to the SRO SPO follow-up discussion. So for this one, we are following up on our last conversation because the board determined we needed to keep talking in order to make sure we get answers to some of our questions. We've received some of those, and Greg's going to review some more of them. The goal of tonight's conversation is to discuss those answers, and our administration is looking for some further guidance at this point. Including, do we have a majority support to authorize the district to fund the potential hire and begin negotiations on an MOU? That would be the next step. And if so, are we looking for an SPO or an SRO? So that's sort of two folded questions we're going to get to. But first, we're going to talk about some of the answers to the questions we had that went to the sheriff and came back, and then any other follow-up answers. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I want to first of all, thank the board, the community members, and their SRO, SPO task force for generating these questions. We sent them over to Sheriff McConville's office. He did respond. I did share those with the Board of Education, but I want to share with the community. The questions generated by the SRO, SPO task force asked, there was a question of can an unarmed SRO, SPO, be hired through the sheriff's department? His answer was no, like you cannot hire an unarmed person through the sheriff's department. The other question is, can an SRO, SPO conceal their weapon while on duty? The answer from the sheriff was no. Is there a difference in how an SRO, SPO responds to external versus internal threats? The question is, protection of life, property are the priority, development of information and intelligence are key to that component as well. There was a sub-question there. Are there other ways districts can partner with the sheriff's department to increase safety and especially to increase response time in emergency situations? Example, acquire radio, panic buttons, other than having an SPO, SRO site? The response was, there is no more effective way to respond to an internal, external threats than having a well-trained, certified SPO, SRO on site who can instantly communicate with members of law enforcement in response to an incident. The fourth question we asked, is there a benefit with respect to quicker emergency response time with an SRO, SPO as opposed to calling 911? If so, yes. Can you explain? The answer is yes. An SRO, SPO on site is a resource first responder who can immediately assess the situation, request appropriate resources, and handle the incident. Although 911 will dispatch patrol, there's no way to determine their response time based upon the numerous factors, location, time of day. The fifth question was, could you share a description of annual training requirements for an SRO, SPO that you referred to during our meeting? The response was crisis intervention training, use of force per New York State Penal Law, Article 35, Putnam County Sheriff's Office, policy and procedures, comprehensive school threat assessment guidelines, first aid, and firearms certification. The sixth question, to the extent the district wanted an SRO, SPO to undergo additional training, restorative practices, understanding signs and symptoms of mental health crisis, is there something we could require? Putnam County Sheriff's Office would require to review any approved additional training that Gus would be funding. This is to ensure there's no conflict between their policies and practices. Question 7, you and your team spoke about accessing a crisis response team when working with students. Can you describe the exact services that are available in such a crisis? The Putnam County Sheriff's Office and the Department of Mental Health and Social Services, Youth Bureau have a partnership. Once the Putnam County Sheriff's Office makes the determination there's no criminal aspect, Mental Health, Social Services, Youth Bureau would become the lead agency in the matter. They would have access to a host of resources, both within and external to the county, that are available for such matters. Question 8, at our meeting, you spoke about data information collecting and sharing with intelligence gathering agency at local, state, and federal levels. We would like to know, unless required by law, could we require the SRO, SPO to obtain authorization from the district before creating a law enforcement record, incident report, that contains a student's PII, which is personally identifiable information? No, is the response. What student and staff information is collected is a sub-question by an SRO, SPO regularly in the course of an officer's daily activities? None. We only obtain data related to an incident. Subsection C of this question is, what data is collected by an SRO, SPO during a crisis response, and how is the data being processed? Basic pedigree information as related to the crisis event in order to provide an appropriate response to the event, and development of treatment pathways. Subsection D of this question, who is the data shared with, and what are the department's data retention and notification to parents' school requirements, policies, and procedures? In the event there is a mental health issue, then the Department of Mental Health, Department of Social Services, Youth Bureau would be responsible for that. If the matter is criminal in nature or has a criminal element to it, then the Core Threat Assessment Management Team, the District Attorney Office, Probation Department, BOCES, Mental Health, Department of Social Services, Youth Bureau, and the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. The last part of this question, are there any circumstances in which an SPO, SRO would share student, family, immigration status with your office or with other law enforcement agencies, federal, state, or local? Their answer was no. The 9th question was, what types of services do you see working best for a pre-K through 8 school? The sheriff's response was, the decision of the type of services is the responsibility of the Garrison Union Free School District. However, there are many similarities in training, practices, and operation that it is believed that Garrison would benefit from SPO SRO services. The last question is, for families and students who may experience fear or anxiety about having an officer in their school system, what strategies or approaches or informational material can an SRO SPO use to address these concerns? The response is the SRO SPO are highly trained personnel aware of the benefit of providing community-oriented services in a school building or district. The SRO SPO is trained to engage in positive relationships with both faculty and students. The SPO SRO is there to build confidence in the relationship between law enforcement personnel and those that they encounter. That is the end of our questions.
Those were all the responses from the sheriff. Now we're going to add, do we have any follow-up questions from board members, thoughts, responses?
I just wanted to share a little, I apologize for not being able to attend the last meeting. I watched the video and listened to all of the discussions from that meeting and appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts on it tonight. Every day, parents entrust their children to the dedicated staff at the Garrison School, expecting not only a high-quality education, but also a nurturing and secure environment. Our collective goal is to create a space where children can engage actively in learning, developing skills in reading, writing, mathematics, and beyond, while growing into thoughtful and responsible citizens. However, I believe none of this can happen if our students and staff do not feel completely safe. Throughout my 32-year career in education, I've witnessed firsthand the unique challenges marginalized individuals face. Some students may feel uneasy with the presence of a police officer on campus, potentially disrupting the warm and inviting atmosphere that our school really provides. With that said, I firmly believe having a school resource officer or school police officer is essential. By thoughtfully integrating this role into our school environment, we can bolster safety while ensuring every student and staff member feels secure and safe.
Thank you. Is any other? I appreciate you taking the time to watch our meeting too. Any other follow-up thoughts, concerns at this point that you want to share?
I'll be happy to speak. First of all, I'm very glad to hear, Greg, about the Sandy Hook Promise or other programming like that. I'm not an expert in those programs, but I have a lot of confidence in what they do, and in my mind, those are the kinds of programs that really have a real effect on student safety. And so I'm glad to hear about that. I'm glad to hear about the counseling services and that they're feeling, like we're doing all we can, and I have a lot of confidence in their opinion and yours and Allison's about that. So that's, I think, a good, really, really good thing to hear. So, our teachers have expressed a clear wish. I continue to believe that an SPO program really doesn't make us safer. But of course, I can't speak for anyone's feelings of safety, which I think is really important. And so I think if our teachers feel that an SPO program is an essential component to giving our students the best education possible, then I can support a pilot program, and with some important caveats. First, if we're calling this a pilot program, which I know we have sort of, I don't know officially if that's what's been decided, but I think that's sort of out there in the board, we need to follow through on what a pilot program actually means. And to me, that means that we're trying this out. That's not a done deal forever, and that we're going to reevaluate this decision at a future point. In my mind, that reevaluation needs to be based on really clear goals and, if possible, some metrics. How are we going to measure this as a success? Is the only goal an increased feeling of safety among our teachers? And if so, how are we assessing that? Do we have a baseline to measure it against? Will we count the number of incidents that the SPOs are involved in and what the outcomes were? Will we measure the level of disciplinary activity with an SPO in the building? Do we have a baseline to measure that against? Is that even the appropriate metric? So I think if we move forward with this, I think the administration or whoever is involved in this needs to really build a plan of program evaluation, which I think again points to the critical importance of that MOU. the MOU really needs to define what the SPO's job is and what it isn't. I, among others here today, not to speak for anyone, have, said that the MOUs we've seen are really not sufficient for Garrison. And given the Sheriff's Department's responses to our questions, I'm deeply skeptical that we will be able to stray from a boilerplate agreement. So, if we don't like the outcome of the MOU process, I think we, as a board, need to be ready to reject that MOU and consider options that give our teachers that feeling of safety, other options that give our teachers that feeling of safety, which is really important to them and thus to me. So, I'm supportive of a budget allocation for a pilot program, but to me, this is not the end of the process. This is just the start.
Yeah, I want to be really clear on that. This is not a vote on an MOU. We haven't seen one. We haven't authorized anyone to go out and negotiate for one on that. So that is sort of the next step on that. Thank you for sharing all those points. They're really important.
Yeah, I'll read my sort of statement, so that way I can spare you all at board member comment. I really do want to thank everybody who's, come out and spoken, everybody who's done homework on this, I think members of the community and the teachers have all asked us thoughtful questions, and I hope they ask us some more. So where I stand is from the start, I've tried to keep a really open mind about this. I've spoken with people who are for it, people who are against it, people who are somewhere in the middle. As I've mentioned before, a retired state trooper who now does school security consulting in a nearby district. I've read the research studies, and when you think about the current state, we have locks and cameras and other technology and protocols that other nearby schools don't have. Other than a meeting night, this is actually a pretty hard building to get into. So we aren't starting from scratch. We always can do more, particularly with mental health.
Wave your arms, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharing, that was a sharing section.
We're being way too still. Sorry.
Anyway, no, sorry. We can do more, particularly with mental health, or by working with a group like Sandy has promised to help us understand, identify, and address risks. I'm really pleased, Greg, that you mentioned that program and some other new initiatives in your report at the outset tonight. But I want to be really clear about something else. One of the main arguments that advocates are making for an SRO/SPO is that they want the teachers and the kids to feel safe. And I think what's been overlooked is that a lot of the people who've reached out to me in opposition to an armed officer are saying the exact same thing. They're saying they want the teachers and kids to feel safe. So it's something we all agree on. But I think that there's a fundamental difference between feeling safer and actually being safer. And that's something that I think Pete has touched on. The teachers have asked for an SRO. And speaking as someone who agrees with Pete that I don't think that it necessarily makes us safer. So I really don't want to add armed personnel here. I still understand where the teachers are coming from. And particularly in one regard, if you have a sheriff's car outside the building, you have deterrence and you have a faster response time in case of emergency from the actual authorities who are up to date on all of their training and have a direct line to the dispatcher. That's logic I can get on board with. That option costs a lot more, but I can support it if there's flexibility in terms of how the program is implemented. Now, unfortunately, it sounds like from the sheriff's responses that there isn't a whole lot of flexibility. So that's a concern. Now, in pursuing an SPO as a pilot program, it's a cheaper option, but it has me concerned about a few particular points. One, an SPO does not get us that deterrence outside the building. There's no squad car there. An SPO doesn't necessarily get us a faster response time from the actual authorities or first responders. I mean, they may have a radio, but it's not somebody who the sheriff is used to hearing from all the time. An SPO is not necessarily as well trained or as informed as an SRO, and according to some people I heard from the task force, who, by the way, thank you again for all of your time and efforts there. One thing that kept coming up was, an SPO is there to give the kids some high fives, and I don't see the value in that. And to Pete's point, if we have an MOU that allows an armed SPO to control the hallways, we're increasing risk for everybody, not decreasing it. Now, this may not be the best analogy, but I wouldn't even want the most well-trained lumberjack who's never had an accident in the hallways with a chainsaw or an axe, okay? We're introducing a person and a deadly object where it didn't exist before. So, and there were a lot of other troubling data points that I came across, and one that jumped out at me was over a 10-year period of school shootings analyzed, 4% were carried out by the SRO SPO. Now, that's not a lot, but it's still more than zero. And, again, in terms of introducing risk, what happens if, the gun falls out of the holster in the hallway and goes off, or a kid grabs it, or that SPO is having mental health challenges of their own. So I think we have to really be serious when it comes to the MOU, to Pete's point. And so from every input that I've received, I think it's clear that an SPO might make some people feel safer, but it doesn't actually make them safer. And I think one of the real worries I have in bringing in an SPO is we'd be doing it at the potential expense of kids of color, boys, kids with IEPs, and kids with disabilities, all of whom the studies have shown tend to suffer adverse outcomes when armed security is added to a school. And we don't have a lot of kids of color here, but we do have some. We have roughly 50% boys. We do have a lot of kids with IEPs, and including a bridge program for kids with disabilities. And that's a program we hope to grow. So I don't know how we square that with increasing risk. So, my feeling is if we're going to do this, I personally would prefer we go the SRO route, even though I did find the sheriff's answers to be somewhat unsatisfactory. I feel like that is a dialogue that can keep going. And I'm much more in line with the idea of an external deterrent and having a faster response time from a full-time professional, and working with the sheriff to ensure that exposure to the officer is kept to a minimum and only to emergencies. At the moment, I'm pleased to see that the plan will include violence prevention education and work with San Diego Promise, as I mentioned, but I really do want to see us commit clearly to the things that the state trooper I spoke to really emphasized, and some of the research I found emphasized, is clearly committing to firearm safety education for parents. The data is 100% clear on this. Most firearm owners believe that their kids don't know where the guns and ammunition are stored, and they know exactly where they're stored. So educating people on firearm safety, I think, is paramount. And the other thing that we can do is we can invest in social media monitoring tools, so we're really listening and we know when kids are in crisis. And these are two things that are proven to reduce risk and increase safety. And I don't know yet, and I emphasize yet, that an SPO represents a good middle ground between those who are for and against an armed officer here. So, if I believe that we really need to update our safety plan in a way that balances the teacher's request for armed security with the utmost concern for the kids who are at most risk. And, and I feel like if we're not really taking those two things together, the teacher's wishes and those kids who are at risk, I don't think we'll feel safer, and I don't think we'll be safer. And I think in that scenario, we all lose. Sorry that was long-winded, but that's what
Thank you. I have a question to follow up on that, but I also want to respond to it just in terms of the surveillance, like monitoring social media. That is currently happening. It's happened in neighboring districts. If there is something that law enforcement sees on social media and it pertains to a student in our school or in any other school in this area, they will notify someone to respond. That's happened very recently around here. And it will throw the whole school into lockdown. So the social media monitoring, I do think law enforcement is currently doing, and I don't know.
Well, my question is, are we doing it? There are I've looked into this, there are some very affordable AI-powered tools that can monitor what's out there in your district. It doesn't monitor people's private messages. It's something like, I forget what the stat was, but it's something like almost all school shooters had shared threats online prior to their attacks. 80% either tell someone or post to social media before they do it. So there's a lot of stuff that, not necessarily just law enforcement, but, that we can use one of those tools and have it in place. It's like a $40 a month subscription fee to these tools. They're not
I would
expensive.
want to look at what our safety coordinator for the region recommends on that, if there's additional stuff. But
And also our attorneys.
yes, but I just wanted, like, that is happening. So one of the questions I had in follow-up to what you were saying is, and what I've heard from community members, both for and against, that have taken the time to write to us, which I greatly appreciate, is this sense of what does this person do all day? So I was wondering, and I know we're not at the point of an MOU yet, we haven't defined that, but in your experience, Greg, if you could speak to sort of, it's 8 a.m., where's the SPO or SRO? What happens next? And sort of take us through their day, or an estimate of what their day might be, and how you envision them moving through and around our property.
Yeah, having supervised this program before, I can kind of tell you what I envision it if we applied it here. The SPO and SRO, the only difference between them from the first thing I'm going to say is, yes, one has a patrol car and one doesn't. They're both uniform, different color uniforms, but definitely both uniform. They would arrive prior to arrival. They would be out by the crosswalk, so people driving down 9D, whether it's an SRO or an SPO, they would be out there being a physical presence. An SPO may not have a cop car sitting on the side, but an SPO would be out there in uniform, so people driving by a 9D would show that there's an officer here monitoring the safety, particularly when people cross. Once we're done with crossing, they would help with the traffic flow and make sure that there's no traffic accidents. They do that a lot in school districts that they're in. They say hello to the kids, they say hello to the staff, they say hello to the parents. After arrival is done, both an SRO and SPO, they would also help with later arrival, which is just after regular arrival for pre-K, making sure traffic goes out smoothly, safely. Then they typically do a perimeter walk. They make sure after everybody has entered the building that all the perimeters are secure, that all the doors are closed. They look for anything that is out in the perimeter. That's typically what they do. They would come back inside. An SRO, SPO may check in with the building principal, seeing if anything's going on. They may be checking the cameras to just make sure external and internal. So after they've done the perimeter, they would check around. Then I would say to you that, let's say at that point, if there's a building safety team meeting, you're part of the building safety team going over protocols. Now, building safety teams don't meet every day, but I'm just giving you an example. Otherwise, they probably, again, do another perimeter check some point before the lunch period, before the kids go back outside, making sure that there's nobody out there, making sure that everything looks safe. They would be out there during recess, maybe at lunch, just monitoring, making sure that, nobody's wandering onto the property and that kids aren't wandering off. Just kind of keeping an eye on the perimeter, Then they would, again, after lunch and recess is over, do a perimeter check again, check the cameras, make sure everything is aligned. This is where I would say an SPO and SRO would differ. An SRO would also be able to do education stuff. They would be able to do firearm safety training. They would be able to maybe work with us on a Sandy Hook promise. An SPO typically doesn't do that. That's not in their job description. So that's the major difference between the two. They would go and make sure that they're out there prior to dismissal. I would have them out there. We have kids that come from our high schools and come down. I would make sure that they're out there, making sure, A, kids aren't sneaking in to meet with their teachers, but B, that everything's safe. Well, those kids are out there with the bus drivers while they're waiting to kind of get on their shuttle runs back to their homes. So they'd be out there for the O'Neill and the Howling kids, make sure the buses got off safely. Then they would, again, secure the perimeter, make sure that they were prepared for the Garrison dismissal, making sure that pickups lines, and they'd be out there directing traffic, making sure there's no issues with that. And then as the kids come out, they'd be monitoring and making sure whether upper parking lot or lower parking lot, making sure that the kids are dismissed safely, that parents are getting out of the safely, doing a lot of traffic stuff, saying goodbye to the kids. And then at the end of the day, they would, do a safety check in with the building principal, talk about the day, debrief if there are any issues or concerns. I've typically seen them also give some suggestions about protocols. Like I saw when you were doing your dismissal, the kid was the last one in. You didn't have a staff member sweep. I've had them where they'll give us some ideas about how to be just a little bit more thoughtful in our procedures to make sure that we're not, whether you're an on-duty officer or a retired officer, they're trained to look for certain things in safety, and they constantly give you feedback as part of that. So that's just, thumbnail sketch of what an SPO, SRO would do. I would say to you, like, SPOs don't do arrests. That's the other thing. I don't see them having a criminal investigation here, but unlike a high school, an SPO would have to call in an active officer if they were in a high school or something like that. So those are the differences between the two. But besides the education piece, they typically are making sure the safety and security and checking with the building principal, communicating and making sure that we go through the proper process and procedures. Also, I would say if we have a fire drill or we have a other drill, lockdown, lockout, that they're drilling with us and managing that with us. I hope that gives you kind of like a flavor of what these folks would be doing.
And if you had a child you wish to assess for any, crisis point, at what point would they become involved, if ever, in your experience?
Well, I would say I would only let them be involved, and we would have to do this whether we had an SRO or an SPO. If we do a threat assessment or crisis assessment, our team, if we think it's credible that a kid is going to hurt themselves or have access to a weapon and hurt someone else, whether we have an SRO here or nobody here, we would have to call law enforcement. But
we currently do call law
enforcement. We do. We have, in not my time here, but it has happened here in the past. We have an obligation that if we believe that there's going to be one of our students, or we even get from one of our students a report that another student that we may not know has said they have a gun, we have to report those things to law enforcement so that they can look into it. Whether or not we have law enforcement on site or not, we would have to report that. So I would say we wouldn't get, if we had someone on site and we did a risk assessment, we would only include them if we would include them otherwise, if we didn't have one, which is an imminent threat, criminal activity, something that we would have to legally report to law enforcement from the jump.
Can I just ask a question just based on your experience? Because one of the things that came up both in my conversation with the state trooper, who, again, like I said, still does school security. I've had multiple conversations with him, but also in research. One of the things that was really concerning was that he said, one, the job can be really boring, and then in the research, it said that a lot of times SPOs can go looking for trouble. And so I think granted, that comes down to us making a good hire, right? So that's one thing. But I think where a lot of parents have expressed concern to me, and it's one that I share as well, I think that the way that you outlined it sounds fine for the most part. The concern is armed personnel in educational spaces, like patrolling the hallways, mid-instruction day, coming into the learning commons while there's kids here if there's not an emergency. And I think that's what, kids with, fragile emotional state or whatever, that's what those parents are worried about, is that constant officer armed presence. And that's what I think is, personally, that's sort of the red line for me is, it's a school. I really don't feel or see the need to have an armed officer walking the hallways during the instructional day. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I just curious.
I'm sorry, I just want to answer your question.
Yeah. How do you address those concerns from those parents? From those kids who, what part of the person's job is being in spaces where students are regularly congregating. Outside during recess, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I think that makes sense. That's where you can be vulnerable to outside bad actors. It makes sense to have an officer presence there, right? That doesn't bother me. What I think is concerning for many parents who've reached out to me, and it's concerning for me as well, is an armed officer patrolling the hallways, cafeteria, learning commons during the instructional day.
Yeah, my experience, I'll just give you my experience. I wouldn't consider them patrolling the hallways or patrolling the cafeteria. I have seen successful programs work when they're interacting, asking kids about their day, trying to make connections with kids, being friendly. That's when I've seen it being successful. Theoretically, this, I think, boils down to defining the role of an SRO, SPO in your particular building. It goes back to, let me say this, let me answer it this way. If my own children were enrolled in this building, I would want an SPO or an SRO here. But I'm not, and I'm not a taxpayer, my children don't come here. I'm the superintendent of schools, and it's also important for me to understand the concerns that you are raising. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. We would have to make sure that, safety, and I think we all want the same thing. We want our kids to be safe, we want our staff to be safe, actually and emotionally and all of that. But we do have to address some concerns. To your point, I think we do have to have an MOU if we decide to go forward that provides the necessary protections and assurances that our community values. And that includes defining the role of an SPO or SRO, what they do, and stringent safeguards. You talked about getting involved in discipline. I haven't seen that, but the MOU would need to specifically state, in no way, shape, or form do they get involved in regular discipline of our kids. I wouldn't want them. I agree with everybody on that. Two, I think the problem in the research is when they start getting their noses involved in typical discipline, that's not appropriate, and I agree with that statement. I would also say that we need to make sure that we retain the authority, that the right person comes into our building. If they're going to share spaces with us, we need to make sure that we have the final say in who's hired. And if someone isn't sharing the space with us, making us all feel safe, we need, through an MOU, the ability to promptly remove them. I don't feel comfortable without those safeguards either. Again, my job as superintendent is to make everybody feel safe. I would also say that we need to integrate. You asked about what do they do? How do they integrate? Well, one of the things that I would make sure that we be able to train them in our SEL programs and how we engage with kids and when we engage with kids, and that they understand the nuances of neurodiverse students. My background is special education. I've built programs for neurodiverse kids my whole entire career. I've had SPOs and SROs in programs with behavioral disorder programs. And when you define and train them the right way, they don't get involved in it. They let the school handle it. That's just my experience. But I think to the point that folks are trying to make, if these safeguards aren't in place, then I too would not feel comfortable bringing someone into the space, just dropping them into the space and say, well, I hope you had the training you needed. No. There are definitely assurances if the board decides to move forward that I would not be comfortable with unless those things are in place. And if they are in place, I have seen it be successful. But I am keenly and acutely aware of people's concerns. They've brought them, they've been articulate about it, they're well-reasoned. So I think we have to look at this situation in that light.
Okay, any other, I love hanging out here all night, but I am cognizant of the fact it's almost 10 o'clock and we still haven't gotten to the budget presentation.
Yeah, I wanted to do what I did last time and make a suggestion that we move public comment up for the budget presentation. I have a feeling that most people in the audience want to talk about SRO.
I will add that tonight is the budget forum, which allows for back and forth on the budget, so we can actually talk and answer questions.
It's just more time to talk and more time for the public to talk instead of us.
I will then, I defer to you. I do want to, though, follow, before we get to making that motion, I want to make sure, what I am hearing, and I want to, is
Can I
that,
just say my
yeah,
mind?
yes.
There's been so much said, I do not support adding an armed security officer to the budget. But I will forego giving all my reasons because they've been given in all these various forms, including the description of what an officer would do all day. I think we don't have the need for that.
Okay, thank you. I do think thank you for speaking up and sharing, I really appreciate that, because I do think while we do have objections, we do have consensus to move forward. However, with majority in terms of getting to that next step of let's look at what an MOU is, I would like to have a follow-up discussion though. If we're calling this a pilot, how do we evaluate it? So I think one of the things I'd like to schedule, if we are moving forward, is what does that mean? And really narrow that conversation into what are we looking for in an evaluation? What are we comfortable with? So put that in a forward, because I don't want to drop that topic. I think that was key. And then if there are other follow-up topics that we need to continue this conversation with, I want to make sure we get those added as well. But then I will.
Are we trying to decide?
Well,
the budget
I think right now,
now,
the budget, we have it currently in as a pilot program, which we'll see in the budget for an SPO. We can decide also if we want to move that up for the patrol car to an SRO. I don't know everyone's comfort level with that. I'm comfortable with piloting it personally as an SPO. I don't think I need the patrol car in front of the building necessarily.
I think much like the school lunch, we don't know what we don't know. Having a pilot allows you to gain a lot more information, a lot more intelligence about what we really need here. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time, and the one thing I do know is that there are lots of statistics. None of them are that clear about any of this stuff. And so having a pilot program in place would certainly help us understand better what exactly, if we're going to have this person on campus, what they should be doing, who they should be, and what we truly need. So that's why we probably start with the SPO rather than going fully with SR.
Can you please remind us what the budget allocation is for the SPO?
$52,900.
That's for 2 SPOs.
Well, really, it's, because they have
Right.
earning restrictions, they can't work, one SPO can't work a 40-hour week, so you need more than one. So you will have 2, but you don't have 2 in the building at any one time.
Right, but it's 2 people that have to fit our district.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that, because I don't want to spend more on something that I just don't believe actually makes us safer. I'd like to spend a little more.
Well, we can have just 1 SPO and have them be part-time and not have full coverage. And add to the kind of, randomness of where the person is, so no one who just heard the whole rundown of where they may be all day can't actually, come into the campus.
That is something to consider, and also given how many districts are currently adding SPOs, we want to look at availability as well, because I know there is many of our neighboring elementary and middle schools are adding them currently as well, so.
I mean,
A lot of demand.
Maybe we still budget for the 2 people just so we have coverage, but if we don't find 2 good ones, I do not want to say, well, someone just okay, or we're concerned about, it's not a problem for me.
I think that's a good point, as well as again, it comes back to the MOU that I think you have the ability to start really negotiating and asking, so we get a concrete sense of not in general, but what is this document going to look like?
Yeah, I think if we're authorized to begin that, but again, I think everybody's points are well taken. We do have to also set up some feedback loops to what metrics to see the effectiveness, but there's got to be certain assurances in an MOU, if we're authorized to engage in that process, that they may, and again, the sheriff did say we could redline it, we could give it to them. I'm not engaging him with that unless it's the will of the board, but if we do, even if we come back and it doesn't meet our standards, then we don't have to go forward with it, and we can look at alternatives. If it does meet our standards, then we can start to discuss, the board can decide whether or not they want to engage in it. And then we could just start to discuss what sort of metrics do we want to build in and feedback groups to assess the effectiveness of the program, and also get at to make sure that it doesn't negatively impact the school environment that some people are concerned about, that we have to take very seriously.
I think in addition to there being evaluation metrics, we're gonna have to be training some of our staff, and there's gonna be, we're gonna feel it in the building, both on the staff side, but also on the student side, and also on the community and on the family side. So it's gonna take a lot of time out of someone's day. I don't know who, probably multiple people already on staff. So what's the plan for onboarding them, and what's the plan for dealing with our staff and training them on what they can and cannot do?
Yeah, in my brief remarks, we would have to work with our clinical team and our staff and our building principal on what that would look like. And part of the part of it is they need to be trained on how we speak with kids and how we deal with kids and our SEL programs. And that has to be part of the agreement, that before they set foot in our building, that our staff is training them on what we do and what our expectations are. I think that's critically important because you want someone to, whatever you think about an SRO or SPO, you want them to add value to your climate and culture. You don't want them to detract from it. And we have an incredible climate and culture that's really important to the community and our staff and our students, and it's really important to me. And I don't want to invite anybody into this environment that's going to take away from the very unique, warm, and incredible environment that we've created here. That is the last thing I want to do as superintendent of schools.
But I think we have a path to move forward, at least towards our next presentation, and I will take that motion.
Motion to move public comment
To now.
the budget presentation.
Is that a budget resolution?
I think I usually like doing that, but because the budget presentation is the back and forth, which includes.
Right, but I don't want the budget presentation to be an SRO discussion necessarily. It's really not the purpose of the budget presentation. We talk about the SRO piece within the budget, and we can do that after public comment. But it is 9 o'clock and.
We could have public comment and, you know, the back and forth is gonna happen for the budget regardless, and I hope everyone stays because it's, again, a great budget.
But before you go to that, so
Yeah.
am I hearing that there's consensus to have, to move forward with discussing the MOU with the sheriff's office?
I believe we have consensus, and I understand you're not, it's majority, it's not everyone, but yes.
It's not majority, but so that Dr. Stoll and Mr. Jimmy can start.
Yes.
So will we do that before the next budget?
I think that process is gonna
Year
take,
starts.
I think, yes, but it's gonna take as long as it takes to get the MOU, and allocating the funds is a separate thing. So that's in the budget, and then the MOU is not bound by the budget deadlines at all. There's a cost.
So we have a motion on the table.
We have a motion on the table. Do I have a second? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention. All right. Switching forward to public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. Okay, first I have Lori Johnson from GTA.
Good evening, I have to see you guys a lot lately. I think I've actually been at every board meeting since January, so I'd like to meet them and come groupie. But yeah, just, you know, obviously I'm Lauren Johnson. I'm here as the co-president of the Garrison Teachers Association, here representing our members, the teachers, and the school-related professionals. So on behalf of the Garrison Teachers Association, you know, we believe it's important to start just by recognizing and acknowledging the valuable work our current clinical staff is doing in heading our SEL initiatives here at Garrison School. Our school counselor and psychologists play an essential role in promoting a positive, inclusive, and supportive school environment daily in the lives of students, along with the administrators, educators, and support staff. So as a union, we continue to work collaboratively with the district to ensure the success of students academically, socially, and emotionally, while remaining committed to the ongoing improvements of our SEL programs under what our administration and clinical staff suggest. We believe that the combination of this continued investment in all of our SEL initiatives that have been going on a long time, I've actually been here 22 years, it's hard to believe, I know I keep saying that, but it really is true. And we have really grown them tremendously.
So we're committed to this ongoing improvement, but, we're also looking at that. We don't want our students just to feel safe, supported emotionally, socially, like with their growth and development. We really think we're top notch in a lot of ways. And what we really feel is, in addition to these SEL programs and initiatives, is the presence of an SRO-SPO. It's going to support our safety in our school community, and where they're going to serve a critical role in addressing potential threats from outside the school environment. They're going to help us ensure that we are doing all that we can to protect students' staff from a security standpoint. We believe the focus of social emotional growth and conflict resolution, that remains with our clinical staff, our educators, our administrators. I want to be very clear on that. We believe safety is that primary focus when we're looking at this. And I just want to remark too, like everything Greg said, like that's the kind of community we are as teachers, and we're here for students. We're here for students that will be comfortable, and creating through an MOU, through more discussions, through even just discussions with the task force, right? And things that came out, so we knew what questions to ask. Like that's what we're looking for. We're happy that we've been going through this process, even if we all are not in agreement. But again, we do believe that the SRO-SPO is the next step where every other school in Putnam County has one. And I've talked to a lot of people in different school districts, different union presidents, to get honest opinions of where they feel is, and I'm getting a lot of benefits. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. So, we really do look to continue to work together to ensure that, all around that we are doing best outcomes for our students, our school community, and we're pleased to continue this conversation and that you're considering this because we do believe that this is something, like I said last time, we would not have brought to you as a board, as a community, as administration, if we didn't feel it was important. Thank you.
Thank you. Radio.
Hi, Radio, it's Garrison. I just heard a lot. There was a task force. You got the answers to some of the questions from the task force. Those, it seemed, were shared amongst the board, not outside. I don't know what conversation y'all have had. Personally, I find most of the answers to that not particularly satisfying. And that's not a, hey, I hate this thing or don't hate this thing, not even getting there. I would be really surprised if even if the people who thought this was the greatest idea, let's bring somebody in here to blow somebody away if God forbid there's a threat, if you were particularly satisfied or didn't have some aha moments with some of those answers, right? There's a ton of open questions there. You don't know what you can or can't do at the MOU. You talked about, like Caleb's think about it like a pilot again, and we're gonna pilot the lunch. Well, if you bring in some chalupas and a kid doesn't buy them, or if a kid gets sick, that's one kind of a problem. If you bring somebody in here and there's an emotional issue or a violence issue, that's potentially something you can't walk back. And all I'm hearing, Greg, is like, it sounds like we're getting this souped up crossing guard / security guard a little bit. And if the whole point is that we want somebody to be armed, and if the teachers, if you need somebody here with a gun to make you feel safe, and that's what it is, I hear you. I think you all know, most school violence is somebody inside of our community. To that end, that's why I'm so like, hey, what else can we do to help with mental health? Because that is a fact. These are students, former students, they're using guns that they find in their homes, right? And then you see the stuff Eric's talking about. It's not just that they know where the gun is, it's even when they find a gun and the gun's locked up, they know how to get to the gun, right? So there's just it's an internal problem. And that sucks that that's our problem. I want you all to feel safe. I want my kid to feel safe. I want people to actually be safe. But there's so many open questions on this thing still. I just can't possibly understand how you can say, great, let's go see if we can negotiate a good deal. You're talking about a tool at the end of the day. And the tool is a gun, right? A person with a gun. But what's the problem that you're trying to solve? Is it just people feeling safe? And it sounds like at that point, that's a $200,000 solution now, not a $50,000 solution. I would strongly suggest, and unless you guys are gonna If we have consensus to go vote for the MOU and like you're a board, you can do that, right? But that's not the issue, right? That's not the whole issue, that's not the whole problem, right? There's an opportunity for kids to be heard. I don't think it's alarmist. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that I hate all the stuff that Greg's talking about, all the stuff that Eric's talking about, all the stuff Johnson's talking about, all the stuff that Keith talked about, that people have brought up, that there's a bunch of open questions on that. I don't know if there is a way that you can earmark the money and not go into the MOU point. Maybe it's time to take a step back and like, here's what we have to do to make this a winning situation so that the teachers feel safe, which like full stop, is somebody here with a gun, hear you on that. Hear you that a lot of other districts are doing it. Hear you on the Putnam County thing. Also, Beacon, 15 minutes away, doesn't have it. They have armed security, it's different. So what's the way that people can feel safe, that we can solve these things, that we can work through that? Maybe earmark the money and like try to actually work through the problem and continuing going to it, because right now it feels like it's just like forced rush to go do this thing with the sheriff, and that doesn't feel like a good fit. So.
Thank you. Public comment remains open. If anyone else would like to speak, come on up, just sign my sheet for me, please. Thank you. The podium is yours.
Thank you. First off, just want to say thank you for everyone who's spending plenty of time and effort in this. One thing I just wanted to mention, because I know it sounds like these MOUs are important and setting the trial period is important, and I'm not saying it isn't, I think it is. But all the conversation has been about seeing if it fails and not seeing if it's successful, what the next step is. So if we end up going with an SBO and all these concerns with students feeling uncomfortable and whatever it is, if all that doesn't happen, then I think there might be a conversation of going up to an SRO. So I would like to see, excuse me, kind of both ways, not just the worst case scenario. Let's talk about what happens if it actually does well. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. I'm going to go ahead then and close public comment. We will have more opportunities this evening because now we're going to go on to the 2025-2026 proposed budget presentation and community budget forum. So a few notes on how we do our budget forums. First, we're going to have our presentation, and then the board will have a chance to ask questions, and then the community will have a chance to ask questions. This is a point where community members can come up and ask their questions, and we can have more of a back and forth, unlike public comment. So, yeah, yay. All right. Love a 9 o'clock budget presentation.
9:15.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
We'll be quick, but we'll be thorough. How's that? So thank you once again to the board, the community. Joe and I are going to present the proposed 2025-2026 budget. There are, as I said last time, so I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but it bears repeating. We have some budget objectives. The first is to stay within the allowable tax levy. The second is to provide the Garrison community with a transparent budget process that's based on input from the Finance Committee and key stakeholders. We also want to make sure that in this budget, we repair, and properly maintain the district's facilities and infrastructure. We've invested a lot in our building. We're in a beautiful space, and we need to take care of those spaces that are in need of repair or that can be a safety hazard for some of our students and staff. We also want to maintain budget lines that are based on actual spending and aligned with projections we have for next year. We want to maintain our staffing levels and support programs that promote the district's strategic goals, our initiatives, and always our vision of a graduate, as Allison said earlier tonight, is our guiding light. So this is our vision of a graduate. I'm not gonna bore everybody with going through it, but it is really important to what we do to make sure that our outcomes for our students create the skills and dispositions that we've identified. So our budget is looked in a couple of categories. First is our bread and butter. It's what we do. It's our instructional programs and initiatives. In order to do those things, we need staffing, like our wonderful staff that have still stayed with us for our budget presentation. Thank you. We have our infrastructure and our capital and transportation. You can't get kids to school, there is no school. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our instructional program and the initiatives that we have included in this budget for 25-26. One, and it's based in our vision of a graduate, particularly our foundational literacies. We want to provide additional funds to bring in subject matter experts in technology, engineering, that are going to work directly with our students in areas that we haven't really touched on yet to the fullest extent. And we also want to bring those folks in to provide some professional learning opportunities for our staff. When I met with all our high school kids earlier in the year, one of the things that they told me is, Dr. Stoll, Garrison has done a really good job preparing us. Our kids are doing amazing out in our high schools, our 3 high schools. But one of the things that they don't get as much exposure is to the engineering, the technology, the computer science. But we also want to continue to support the arts, which is really important to us, and add new avenues of art. So STEAM is a focus for us. The other thing is our Summer Scholars Program. My first experience here as your superintendent was in our Summer Scholars Program. It was funded by Recovery Act or ARP grants, which is recovery funds. That money has dried up. I believe, based upon the metrics, we took some data, based upon smiling faces and parents' input and our teachers' wonderful experience, what an incredible enrichment program, what an incredible maintenance of skill program, that also we run an extended school year program that we can fully integrate a full summer scholars with our extended school year program. It is a very valuable program. We believe it should be funded now that the grant money has gone away. The other thing is we want to develop critical and creative thinking. We have 182 acre forest. We are an environmental education school, but we are limited in the amount of time we can spend out in our forest and limited in the amount that we can do in our forest because we don't have an immersive educational outdoor space. Our thinking is you need to design this space with thought. We want to include some money in the budget that we can ask our architects to really think through how can we create an outdoor educational space that can sustain groups of students and staff for prolonged periods of time and provide them with an immersive educational space. So we have some money in this budget to ask our architects to start thinking about that. We also want to expand, as I said earlier, our STEAM offerings, giving more hands-on experience for our students. So those items are included in the budget, and we'll go into more specifics a little bit later. This budget also supports the continuing work we have done as a district to really be a premier educational institution. You heard about the math work that we're doing. Earlier in the year, you heard about the science of reading work that we're doing. We want to continue that, but we also want to continue our environmental education program and continue to support it. In this current year's budget, we put money to support our Youth Climate Summit. We want to continue that work. We also have a robust offering in our special area programs in our middle school with our STEAM, our art, our debate, our informational literacy, our band, our music, our e-music. We want to continue to support that in the budget. We want to continue our 3 through 5 chorus and band program. We've expanded some extracurricular activities, particularly our clubs for our middle school this year. We want to continue to support that work in next year's budget. You've heard a little bit about our robust social emotional learning programs. We have money in the current budget. We want to continue those levels to continue to support the work we do in our SEL programs. We spent a lot of money this year on deep professional, really deep dive into professional development in the science of reading. We want to continue our professional development levels at the same level so we can continue to expand our teachers' ability to provide the best educational experience, the most recent pedagogical approaches. So we want to continue our professional learning and professional development levels at the current. We also want to we're very fortunate. We get to provide our community and our parents and our students and our guardians with an option of 3 really high quality educational experiences for high school. It's like a mini college tour when they go select, so they're prepped really well for college. In order to do that, this budget has to support that and support the funding of tuition to those 3 schools. So we want to continue that and continue our partnerships with Putnam Valley, Haldane, and Highland Falls, and particularly James O'Neill High School. So I won't go through all of it. I did it last time. We have a couple bubble groups. Our current kindergarten is 2 sections. Our current second grade is 2 sections. Next year, the projections are that first grade will need 2 sections and third grade will need 2 sections. So those bubble groups will move up. All the other staffing levels in terms of the sections will remain the same. This budget will be, presentation will be posted on board docs and in our budget section of our website, so you can look at the actual numbers. We work really hard to get these projections as real as we can. So all in all, bottom line it, we have 13 sections currently in all our grades, and next year we're projecting the same amount. So staffing levels from the number of sections are going to remain the same. Our high school projections, you see a little bit of an increase in our high school projections. That next year we project about 100, and it's relatively flat, about projected the year after at 97. We'll talk a little bit about, Joe will talk a little bit about high school a little later on. We see that kind of being pretty stable the next couple of years, and there may be a little bit of a dip after that. There is one thing that I want to talk about that I did talk about last time. Currently, we get our 2 music and band teachers through contracted services through Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. We're suggesting that we add those staff, those staff positions on staff as part of the GTA. Why? Because when you contract with something, you have no ability to kind of maintain that relationship. That person could leave, the terms could change. We want to move those in-house, make those, it creates stability, and it ensures that we get those people in our staff so that we can guarantee that we continue to provide high quality music and band education. So I will say the head counts are going to be exactly the same as they are today. The way we fund them may be different. Everything's going to stay the same in terms of all the other positions. The caveat the board this year moved someone who was hourly rate to full-time as an aide, but that head count is exactly the same. So what we're talking about is a change of where we calculate how we pay for these people, but the head count will be exactly the same. So as you can see, the staffing of the 2.0 and the one for the band and chorus is in the budget, as well as the mid-year adjustment we made to the person who was hourly and is now on staff. Those are the increases in FTE, but again, the head count is exactly the same. We're not adding more people, we're just changing where they're accounted for. So I'm going to kick it over to Joe that'll go through the meat about the year-to-year increases.
Thank you. And what I want to say on that little table there is just a summary of the budget. It's got 2 sides on it, and if you want to pick one of those up to look at it and ask questions later on, please feel free to do so. So we have one of the biggest items, which we'll get into towards the end of the presentation, is we have, again this year, an additional increase to transfer to capital fund to do multiple projects. So that is essentially budgeting money to put towards capital work around the school. And that is going to be increased by close to $400,000 for the year. And then the summer scholars program, we do have that as a line item in the budget, $30,000 for that. We do have a tuition increase, and it's mostly enrollment, and there is some adjustments here and there, but that's the net of it. We have increases to to transportation and to special education tuition, and those are a combination of enrollment and increases in contract costs. This is a look at the transportation expense. One of the things that you will notice is you see a big jump from between the actual 23-24 and the projected 24-25. We do put in contingent transportation expenses because people can move into the district that have special needs, and when they do, we have to account for transportation. So we do have some additional budget for that. So one of the things that we're looking at next year is we do anticipate that we will have to purchase next generation science curriculum and textbooks for those. We have some ongoing issues with legal expenses, so we need to increase the budget for that. Health insurance increase is a combination of the number of people participating in the plan and also the cost of the increases for the rate. Energy performance contract is a vehicle that we're looking at including in next year's budget, which is to have some capital improvements to the school that save energy, and at the same time, the energy cost savings is used to help pay for those improvements, and that is in the budget. And we have a placeholder for design work for the Garrison Forest. I've been told by the architect that I should have a updated proposal from them probably by the end of this week or early next week. And then if there's any changes to what the amount is, we would update the next version of the budget. As Greg was saying, we have environmental education and science, technology, and engineering experts to bring in, and that's $15,000 for that. And then we are replacing the copiers. I'm sure the teachers will be happy about that because there's a number of units that are, a little long in tooth and have some ongoing difficulties. So these are things that we are continuing for next year. So the Youth Climate Summit is funded by the district. We do have a allotment in the budget for next year for field trips, which we also had this year, and then we have $30,000 for professional development to bring people in for the teachers for training. So this is one of the things that we obviously talked at length about. Currently, the way the budget is constructed, the special patrol officer, the cost includes all the onboarding fees and as well as their payroll taxes and everything together for the 2 officers that would comprise a 40-hour work week. Comes to $53,000. We have a transfer to the school lunch fund for the kitchen improvements. So it's primarily a number of items that would allow us to keep food warm or to warm food up, keep food at the proper temperature to be able to serve it, as well as if we are transporting food from another location where it's made, basically special containers that will keep the food at the right temperatures in transit. So those are being supported by fund balances, those items. And then the school lunch program, as we previously discussed, will require additional funding to offset the operating costs, so the cost of the labor and the cost of the point of sale system. That is being supported by, we made some adjustments to our budgets for enrollment based upon more current information, and that is included in the current version of the budget, and it doesn't, hasn't impacted the tax levy at all. Let's just look at it, inflation. We all know it's been high lately. So Garrison school taxes are the lowest in all these 5 counties. The median taxpayer pays 1.9 times as much than Garrison taxpayer does. There's 88 school districts that have taxing authority in one of the 5 counties. Garrison is ranked 88th out of 88 based upon the tax roll data from the fall. That's $8.48 per thousand of full value. Here's some of the other low numbers is Curious Shoal and Canico, and then just so you know, the highest is Haverstraw at $26 per thousand. So the tax cap, there's a formula that's established. It's the prior year's levy, the growth factor, and then the exclusions are taken out of the prior year and then added back in for the new year. So the allowable growth factor is 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less, so it's 2%. The inflation is higher than 2%. So the exclusions are the capital tax levy. Both you compare last year's to the current, to the upcoming year, and the reason for that increase is 2 components. So the transfer to capital for the projects as well as the energy performance contract. So those are really the only 3 factors that really make a significant difference in the formula here. So the maximum allowable levy increase under the cap would be 5.78%. We recognize that or the board has, and the finance committee has recognized that is not a levy that they feel the public would support, and so they have selected 3.58 for the tax levy. So what does that mean? Well, the median single-family home is assessed at $300,000 in Phillipstown, but that's at an equalization rate, which means that median value is 33% of the full value of the property, which is estimated to be $889,000. In 24-25, the tax on that property would have been $7,544. The estimated tax, if nothing else changed, would be $7,850 or an increase of $306. And that, if you if you're paying a mortgage, your tax payments are paid monthly as a part of your escrow, that would be $25.48 a month. In Putnam Valley, there's a small number of single-family homes in Putnam Valley that are part of Garrison. The equalization rate is actually greater than 100%, it's 106%. So a median single-family house is actually, full value is less at $500,000. The 24-25 tax would be $4,248, and that would be a $172 increase for the year, estimated at $14.35 a month. Are we doing an override? No. 3.58, we just need a simple majority. It's 2.2% below what our limit would be. This is a revenue forecast in our budget. And you see interfund transfers, that is the transfer from the undesignated fund balance, as well as 1.4 million, and then the use of debt service of 100,000. So we do have debt service reserve. There are significant increases to the capital expense that are included as a part of the budget. So the finance committee has recommended that we use some of the debt service reserve to support next year's budget. The other thing that the finance committee will probably do closer to the end of the year is recommend reallocating a portion of the remaining undesignated fund balance to bolster existing reserves, and one of the reserves that it would probably increase is the tax reserve, because that was depleted over the last couple of years, and most likely also some increases to the teachers' retirement contribution reserve. So this is a forecast of what the amount of appropriated fund balance to support the current year, where we think we're going to end up the year, and then if we use 1.4 million next year, where we think we would end up after that. So based upon this, we still believe we would be over the recommended 4% limit for the undesignated fund balance, but we would be reducing it significantly for by 25, 26, but it still wouldn't be under the limit. Based upon that math, it would be at around, at the end of 24, 25, the amount still left would be closer to 11%. So this is the proposed budget in the basic sections. So you can see there, we have some increases in instruction, which is a combination of tuition and special education tuition and other items. And then employee benefits, that's primarily health insurance, and the transportation we already talked about. And the interfund transfers, there's a number of items there, so that's the transfer for the to the school lunch program as well as to capital. So let's talk a little bit more about transfers to capital. The SED determines that building improvements basically have a 15-year life. So you could finance them over 15 years, but that adds cost. So there's $648,000 of capital improvements that are transfers to capital. Our fiscal advisor basically informed us that based upon the rates that we would get for if we borrowed $648,000 at the current rates, a bond of that amount would probably have an annual interest rate of around 5%. And if you add that to the cost of doing that work, that would add $235,000 worth of interest expense over the life of the loan. So that's a significant amount of money. And if we do have the amount in our undesignated fund balance to help us cover it, we think it just makes good fiscal sense to use that and to pay for it, because we don't get significant building aid. Garrison is not considered a high need district, and so we actually wouldn't be eligible for any aid for this project anyway, due to the amount that was recently spent on the school for the last project. So it just makes sense to minimize the cost however we can do. And there's a number of things, as you'll see in a minute, as to why we need to do them. So we looked at, with the facilities committee, the last time that we worked with the architect to do an enhanced building condition survey, that there's a number of items that were considered priority one, so things that need to be done in the next 0 to 3 years. And so we looked at those items that most had the most impact on the building envelope, so the preventing water and weather from getting into the building, and safety. So those are the two things that we kind of focused on. This is a big list. We can't do it all in 1 year. We can't do it all in 5 years. We're going to have to keep picking these off. So it's essentially what we're doing here. So there's the 1908 section of the building. So that's the front stone section by the original entrance. There is a number of shingle roofs there that are failing, and you'll see in the pictures, it's like the coat of many colors, where it's multiple layers of roofing that are peeled off. So that has to be all removed to the base. There's an asbestos containing waterproofing layer on the bottom, so that has to be taken away. And then we got to install new waterproofing shingles and copper gutters, because that's a historic feature of the building, and it has copper gutters, so we have to put those on. So that's a look from the roof. One of the things you also see is when you have a windy day, more shingles blow off, and that's what you see on roofs and the ground. In the main office, there is a foam roof that has got an active leak. So we're going to take care of that, remove that foam roof to base, and then abate the waterproofing layer underneath, and do EPDM and then polyisofoam to do that roof. And we do our best to direct it into trash cans and whatever means necessary to keep it from going on the floor. But that's what we have to do, and that's a look at the roof from the roof over top of the conference room. So this is another big item. So when you go into any kind of industry, the most common accident that you have, workplace accident, is slips, trips, and falls. So most of our significant part of the budget of this is to make masonry improvements that enhance safety. So all three entrance concrete staircases are going to be replaced, including the railings and the nosing. Replacing the concrete sidewalks and the curb, because as you walk out there, you'll see level differences between the curb and the slabs. And then we have some retaining walls to repair, both in the elementary courtyard and back by kindergarten. And then there's a stairway that's currently blocked off by kindergarten, like patio area, that needs new nosing to be replaced. So there's two pictures there. So a couple of years ago, we did some extensive patching where we basically took out the loose material and we put some epoxy compound in there to fill it. But when we were doing that, we noticed that the material that forms out the steps is basically very substandard, so it's always going to keep falling off and coming apart. And this is kind of what the what we did. So there's anchors and everything to help hold it in place, but with the salt and everything that you have to do to keep it safe, it continues to fall apart. So we really need to replace the whole thing. And this is just to give you an idea of the scale of it and the size of these holes and tripping hazards. And you can see that the railing also is rotted out in some places, and if you're going to take out the whole staircase and the railing is in the middle of it, you might as well replace that at the same time. What we have here. And then there's a lot of trip hazards. Part of this is due to, we have a downspout that drains directly onto the sidewalk there, next to that bike rack that's in the back of the frame. And part of the project is also to connect that roof drain to a drain in the parking lot to correct that situation. But there's a number of slabs that have settled, and there's trip hazards that are a result. And you can see the difference between the curb height and the sidewalk height, and that's a tripping hazard. And everybody's going to want to buy Skechers after this. Thank Mandy for being my model here. And this is the staircase in the back. And those are going to have to be redone. In the kindergarten area, that back wall that forms out by the staircase, that needs to be repointed. Because when the water gets in there and it freezes, it breaks that apart. And then in the elementary courtyard, there's repointing that needs to be done there. In the back, by the middle school, the retaining wall needs some repair by the back entrance by the middle school. And the other thing that's going to be done is they're going to pin the top course there to the below, so that way when kids climb on it, they don't want to come off the side. So these are some of the unknowns. So deadline for sign up for transportation for private schools is April 1st. And then, so we won't know until then what private school kids we have to transport for next year. And we have special education placements we have to do. So in order to balance the revenues, the district must allocate 1.4 million of undesignated fund balance to support the budget. Tax levy is 245,000 below the limit, and you only need a simple majority. If the budget is defeated, they can do a revote. They can adopt a contingent budget. Contingent budget would be a 0% increase. It would increase the gap by 453,000 and will require 453,000 in cuts to balance the budget. If we had to do a contingent budget, it would do staffing cuts that would affect both program and admin, because the district would have to be under the administrative cap, which is the ratio of admin to program percentage. So there's two propositions. One is the budget. And the second one is to renew a contract with Putnam Valley. We do this every couple of years so that you have a rate locked in for the school that's known for the whole time that the next incoming freshman class is going to be at high school. And so we renew these every few years, and Putnam Valley is up next. And in order, we have to have permission from the public in order to be able to do that. So that's why we have it there. So we have, let's see here.
Go back one.
Yeah. So we've got a budget forum on Saturday. So please, if you have more questions that we don't answer tonight, you can come back Saturday and ask some more questions. And then if you just want to meet us virtually, you can do that Wednesday the 2nd. April 9th is the final adoption of the budget. And that's when everything is basically fixed, because then that information has to go out and be published. May 7th is the hearing, and May 20th is the vote. And now we can talk about any questions that people have.
All right, thank you, Joe and Greg. First, I'm going to open it up to questions and thoughts from the board members before I move on to the community.
Yeah, I just want to thank Joe and Greg for, again, being flexible with this and taking a really sensible way to approach this budget. We thank Jocelyn as well and Sarah, Finance Committee. We had a lot of different exchange of ideas on how to do different things. But I really like this budget. I really like what we're doing with STEAM. I like that we're taking a look at the forest finally and getting that underway. And obviously the infrastructure pieces are important. And the way Joe is doing this, the way to avoid finance costs, but still keeping our levy at a pretty reasonable rate given the circumstances of the world today is much appreciated. Obviously the school lunch and the SPO, SRO, or we decided to do, it's like an SPO at this point, are going to fit in there without raising the levy from what we did in our first budget presentation. I feel very good about that. Like I've discussed, these are pilot programs. There are so many unknowns at this point that asking the public to raise additional funds and taxation for something that there are good chances may not come through, and certainly probably won't come through in the amount that we think they will, I feel like is irresponsible at this point. Certainly next year when we get to the point where we have more information, I don't want to stop these things because we don't know exactly what we're doing, but when we have more information after pilot, we have a really good opportunity then to get this cost right, get what we want in the right way, and then move forward from there. I've been here 12 years as a parent. Been here 4 years on the board. The school's never been stronger, and I think this budget reflects that and the hard work that not only everybody's doing with task force and finance committees and policy committees. I think we have a lot to be proud of. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. If anyone else wishes to share some thoughts or ask questions, I think we'll move on to the opening up to the public. All right. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the public for questions. I ask if you have a question, please come to the podium and we'll address it. You also have an opportunity, if it's too late for you, to come back on Saturday in the morning when there's coffee.
Bring coffee.
Can we make a comment, but not a question?
You can make a comment on the budget. It has to be about the budget. That's the only parameters right now.
I'm Debbie Earl, as you all know. So we were talking today casually, some teachers and I, we were talking about some of the things that were going to be in the budget. And saw that there were going to be the additions of the two full-time music teachers. So we were just reminiscing back in the day when we had one music teacher who did the job of the drama teacher, the chorus teacher, and the two full-time music teachers that we're going to employ. And she did concerts from K to 8 in the spring and the fall. She did plays, she did lessons for grades 4 through 8. So she was like obviously overworked. And I appreciate the fact that we are looking at adding 2 full-time music teachers to our staff. But I think at the same time, we need to look at the other areas where we have reduced positions. Having a discussion with Mr. Young recently about the fact that he is a 0.7 when we've always had a full-time art teacher, I asked him what was lacking now in his curriculum that he was made a 0.7 and not a full-time staff member for the same amount of kids that we've always had. And he said that the ceramics piece of his program has now been put to the side since he was made 0.7. And why that might not seem like a big deal, every single district in Putnam and Westchester have a ceramics piece to their art program. And I just really would hope that if we're going to go to the lengths to hire 2 full-time music teachers, that maybe the board reconsiders his position and what we're missing, what our kids are missing out on in their art curriculum as a result of him not being full-time as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I will add that, just in response to that, because we can go back and forth here, the artists in residence were used initially by that music teacher, and she was the one who introduced, I wasn't here at the time, but I've heard that that's how we got some of that. She was bringing in talent as well and using the BOCES program to help supplement. So she really started a lot of what we have today. So I just wanted to add that. And then I turn to Greg to look at the schedule in terms of adding in more time for students, if that is possible, because the switch was made when we switched the middle school schedule.
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking at how we can, STEAM is also the arts, right? So as we start to explore what that may look like in our advanced STEAM curriculum, we're always gonna look at staffing. We did look at schedule this year, and the board did increase this year a 0.1 of the current art position. So if there's a need, we can come to the board and have the discussions if there's a need to increase it. But we wanna make sure that it's in line with the curriculum that we're developing moving forward. So we're always looking to give our kids additional opportunities, not just in engineering, not just environmental ed, but also in the arts and performing arts. So absolutely, we'll always look at it and we'll always bring that to the board.
Thank you.
And also, the 2 music is not. It's
It's how we pay them.
It's just how we pay them.
Yeah, it's a transfer them to the GTA. The model switched a number of years ago when a full-time teacher left. And we went to look at the artists in residence as a way to divide up the jobs because it's a huge job for one person, which is when we started with artists in residence. I don't remember the year at 10 o'clock at night, I'm sorry. Do I have anyone else in the community who wishes to ask or speak on the budget, please?
Ted Azaris, sorry for making you night longer. Just a couple of questions about budget related to the SPO or SRO implementation. First, is there any consideration to maybe adding some budget or implementation costs, like if there is an agreement in the MOU that this officer would need training on SEL, on understanding our students, on working with neurodivergent students or students of color, implicit bias training. Personally, I have a student who is Black and neurodivergent, so it's a greater concern for me, but probably a concern for others in the community. Is that something that's already budgeted, or would that require additional budget and that should be used?
I think that's a great question. So I've had discussions with our clinical staff. We're trained in the SEL programs, and so one of the things that we want to guarantee that anybody we bring into our building will be trained in the same programs. We can do that internally. We have the capacity to do that. You look back on our robust professional learning, which we're continuing of $30,000, that isn't earmarked for specific things right this second. So if we felt we needed to bring somebody special in to do implicit bias training, any of that training, we absolutely could use those professional learning funds to do that. I think it's a great point, and we want to make sure, and even other training as the years go on, things happen, you want to make sure you have a robust professional learning. So those funds could be used for that, and we have internal capacity as well.
And then my second suggestion, especially given the sensitivities around this program in the community, if it's a pilot, is that we have a real robust data gathering effort around this. And I actually do research as a professional, not with children, so I wouldn't be appropriate for anything like this. But having a pre-wave of research that's done professionally to assess feelings of safety in school by students, staff, teachers, and people in the community. And then at some point after implementation to see if we've actually seen a difference in that from the implementation of the project. And I know that would probably be additional budget because you would want to have an outside third-party vendor. This is not the kind of thing you can do with, the SurveyMonkey survey, send out asking people for that kind of feedback, where you could do, a mixed qualitative, quantitative methodology where you have students who are more at risk, who might not answer a survey, but might talk to someone about their feelings, for example, and really have a more intensive data gathering around this to understand what the impact is and make sure that if the goal is to make everyone in the community feel safer, that that's actually being captured.
Thank you. I want to ask a follow-up on that though. Because BOCES, would BOCES be able to support a service of something like that?
They do safety services, but they do not do, and I have researched this, they do not do survey data research, but there are groups like the Hanford group that do educational survey research and can employ them that have experience in schools and develop surveys. So
I think it's beyond surveys though too. It's qualitative, I think, to be part of the
they do research, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
So they do a whole host of research and they can develop all of that. So there are companies out there that do that.
So that would be probably a $15,000 addition. 10, 15.
Yeah, I think that's a safe estimate.
Thank you so much.
And then on the sorry, I'll let you respond to.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I responded to everything. So yes, we can do the training internally. Yes, we have capacity to bring external people out for additional training. Yes, we can go out and find external research. We would have to find where we would put that money. It could come out of a transfer from some of the professional learning or some of our professional services that we have. But it's something that we can absolutely look at if that's the will of the board.
Where on this budget list do we see the professional services under the
Which one?
the items?
Okay, so this is just the program level. You know, I have.
You have a breakdown of.
I have a breakdown of.
Which under which program level is it?
Okay, so we have, there's some in-service training and instruction, 2070, some of it is there. And then there is some of it that would be in curriculum development and supervision, some of it is in there, and some of it would be just in the regular teaching, regular school.
Okay.
So there are multiple places where this stuff is, and it depends on what you're actually doing, where it is. So this is just the program level, just summary by program level, and there's object, and there's all this there's other levels of breakdown that's in the rest of the budget. This is just in order to get it on one page, to not burn a lot of paper because we are green, we have been in school, we just did a one-page now. With both sides, because,
There is a survey, I think, I just found out, it's out of the University of Oregon about, they did some research and they recommend a survey for schools, of safety, and how we do a pre and a post, and it's, there's Likert scales, and there's also quantitative and qualitative data in that survey, and you can reach out to them. I'll grab some of the link, there's no cost to that. But it would give you some of the data points that I'm sure we'd be interested in looking at, and it is a research-based survey.
Sorry to keep you up there. If you have any follow-ups, please. Thank you.
Hello, Coulter Young, art teacher. So there was a slide earlier that said STEAM and it mentioned the arts. So I'm just curious if there's anything specific. It looked like there was a picture that went along with it. I don't know if it was a 3D printer or anything, so I just want to know if there's any more specific thoughts about STEAM and the arts.
Yeah, I would answer the following. We're always looking at ways that I think it goes back to the discussions I had with our high school students, where they said things like CAD and CAD design and other sort of digital arts that we don't have a ton of experience in. So, Coulter, we'd be looking for opportunities to bring subject matter experts in, look at what we do in our arts, start to increase some of the art opportunities that maybe the kids in our neighboring high schools have gotten in middle school and elementary school, and start to integrate that stuff. So that subject matter expert doesn't mean it has to be computer science only. It can be the digital arts and bringing somebody in to do that work in our curriculum. So we're looking forward to working with our staff and looking at our curriculum, doing some crosswalks and seeing where we can kind of like continue to evolve in our STEAM program. So the arts are, as I said earlier, incredibly important. We want to make sure that it's not just STEM, it's also STEAM. So we are going to be looking for you, and I know you've had conversations with Allison about our art program and how we can start to add some new things to it. So we want to put some money to support you in that work.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Obviously, we've had a lot of conversation about SRO, SPO. From more of a 30,000 foot view, is the board looking at setting a budget towards just security in general? Whether that's cameras, whether that's upgrading doors, SPO, SRO, is there a target for the budget to be allocated towards that? And kind of a follow-up of the same question, do other schools set that, and do we fall within the standard of what other schools are doing for security?
Joe, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I'll start with just the basics. So there is a specific line for security in the budget. Currently, it is just the SPO amount, but there's other parts of the budget where we have items that are related to security that are not specific, and then there's things that we have that once they're purchased, they don't cost anything. So like the camera system that we have, there isn't any kind of significant cost to maintaining it year over year, because once we have the license for it and we have all the cameras, that's what we have. The door access is the same way. The clocks and the notification system that we have is another thing that was part of it. So while we don't have a significant number of items that are in the budget that are related to security, the addition of the SPO is the most obvious one. A lot of it was capital related that was a part of the last project. So the security vestibule that we have at the front, that was part of that capital project, which allows you to get somebody in the first door and finish talking to them before they go into the next one, or they just have to drop something off and just go in there. So a lot of it was capital intensive.
And I want to add too, some of it is also training. We get safety and security services from partner Northern Westchester BOCES that does a lot of training for our building emergency response team, for our staff. And we have refresher training on workplace violence every year. So though it's not labeled safety and security as a budget line, it is through our BOCES line. We do continue to do that. So as Joe said, the district has made some improvements in safety and security through the capital project that I've mentioned previously, but there's also items that aren't labeled under a budget as safety and security that we constantly do. And one example of is Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES Safety and Security, which is training and working on tabletoping and emergency response planning with our building response team.
Also, just like that, Matt, if you're getting at sort of the comprehensive, 30-foot view, we do annually, we're required to do this comprehensive safety plan that is led by a team at the school that includes Greg, I believe, Allison, our school psychologist, a school counselor, and it goes through, a lot of this stuff sort of methodically, including some of the SEL programming, violence prevention training that we do, the perimeter security, all that kind of stuff. So to the extent that, you're interested in that, that's available. A version of it is publicly available, and we go through that annually to be noticed over the summer and open for public comment.
Gotcha. Yeah, the only reason I bring it up, but is there's obviously been steps that are taken to help security, and that's great. But let's say didn't use that MOU thing a lot tonight. Let's say the MOUs don't work and we go away. It doesn't sound like this $50,000 is then going to go to increasing security. It kind of disappears from security. That might be too broad of an assumption, but
No, that's a good way to look at it. So I want to speak to what I see as a budgeting approach. When we're asking for taxpayer dollars, I think we need to be able to really clearly communicate what they're for. It's part of what bothers me about having too much fund balance. We're kind of taking people's money and we haven't used it for anything. So I think we don't look and say, oh, we need to spend X number on security. I think we backtrack and say, what do we need every year? And then if it's capital, we have to spend that differently, get different approvals for that. That is excluded from our operating budget. So when we're talking about our operating budget, it is a separate budget from a capital expense, which is why you'll see on the fund calculations Joe does, of like, these are capital exclusions when we're doing repairs to say masonry or installing cameras. So from my perspective, I don't think allocating, saying, all right, this is what we're going to spend X number of years, I think every year makes sense when you're talking with taxpayer dollars. I want to make sure I know what they're going to and that has a purpose behind it. And I watch a lot of budget meetings this time of year. There's some really good ones out there right now that I would highly recommend. But that gives you a sense of what other districts are doing too. You can even just read their budget presentations to see how they're thinking about it. Larger districts are going to start breaking those down into different areas. That might give you a better sense of whether they're looking at those broken into security components. I haven't seen that necessarily. I usually see like special education broken out from general education or something as a presentation. But I haven't seen anyone really looking at this and saying, all right, I want to allocate this much to security or really anything. It's driven by how many kids, what is the need, and I guess electricity maybe allocated. Really, it's like need-based. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
And the other thing that goes along with it is we develop the budget and the finance committee recommends it to the board based on the best information that we have at the time on what we think the expenditures are going to be. If there isn't a justified need for an expenditure once you get into the school year, you don't spend it. And then the board can decide to reallocate some funds, depending on what kind of funds they are, or other things that the board determines that they need later on as the year goes on. But, we currently have $53,000 to support starting an SPO program. If that doesn't happen, we don't necessarily spend it. So, it would get returned to the undesignated fund balance to be reallocated in the following year. Or, if it's undesignated the following year and we need to increase the reserve, could do that. But we use the best information that we have at the time to be able to determine what the budget line should be and where the money should be allocated. But that's the best information. That doesn't mean that it's going to end up that way. And the MOU conversation may go much longer than the board has in order to be able to adopt the budget. But we need to have it in place there that in case everything works out, it's there to be able to spend it on.
One comment on cafeteria. Very pro food. I'm tired of making meals every morning. But one thing that it sounds like a lot of the conversation has been around hot food, but that might be a requirement for the school. So this conversation might go out the window. But in the middle school that I attended, there was weirdly two cafeterias. One was hot and one was all prepackaged cold food. So it was prepackaged bagels, chips, prepackaged sandwiches. I don't know if that necessarily changes the cost, that goes into it, but just want to throw it out there as well.
We've talked about hot and cold, or a mixture of the two.
Then, just to add, there will be some costs regardless of what, that may change what kind of equipment we need for heating or not heating, but we'll still have cooling requirements to keep things at temp. We'll still have staffing issues, we'll still need a point of sale. So like around the edges, yeah, it may change, we may not need a heating oven, but we would need servery and we would need some other things. So I don't know that it would change the calculus like significantly to make it a big difference.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sorry, I'm trying to put it down. What if you need the SRO money? Or would it be fair to say that with the budget proposal that's been put out, that the board is suggesting we're just gonna go with an SPO? Like, what if you need to spend $200,000, not $56,000, or whatever the cost is for a active duty sheriff?
So I think, I mean, if we need to spend more, we'd have to budget for more. I think the will of the board at this point sounds like it's an SPO at this point. We can continue to revise it and increase that budget line. And then it would be, again, returning to the same question of where does the money come from?
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, oh, just have a quick question, and I realize the ship has probably sailed, but what would the levy increase be if, percentage-wise, you're better at math than I am, if the SPO were added to the levy? So would we go from 3.58% to what?
It would be 4.1%.
4.1?
Yeah, and that would put it above put it as one of the highest ones as far as in terms of the districts that have reported what their possible levy is going to be. So the the 75th percentile is 3.68. The highest is 4.98, and that is the Marinette that's looking to do an override. That's based upon what's currently in the 15 or so districts that have reported so far. So it would put us like on the high end. So that's a choice, but that's what it would do.
Anyone else have any thoughts, comments that they wanted to add to that? All right, thank you. Any other follow-ups? Let me see where we are. For the minutes now. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular workshop meeting of March 5th, 2025. May I have a motion, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments as the minutes as presented? Ready? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Next, we move on to the financial reports. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the treasurer's report for February 2025 and further accepts the claims audit report for February 2025 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on the reports as presented? Go ahead and move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Moving on to CSE CPSE recommendations, be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education and the Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations and student placements. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Moving on to our consent agenda. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please? Anyone have any questions? Thank you, Dan, for agreeing to.
It's my pleasure. Are you not the chair because you're running? Is that the rule?
Yeah. kind of excited about.
I know, but you always were so excited you get there at 6 a.m.
I know, 7 a.m. actually, 6 a.m. is not when the pool is open.
Strike that from the record.
Yeah, just to be clear. I also want to thank our election workers who volunteered. Dusty, thank you for that process. All right, any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention. Moving on to new business. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves the new business items as presented. May I have a motion, please? Thank you. Do I have any questions or comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Abstentions? Nays? Okay. Thank you. This brings me to the last public comment of the evening. I'm not going to read the paragraph again, but the rules still apply. And if you'd like to sign in, I have a sign-in sheet here. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, move on to board member comment and other discussion. Jocelyn. Thank you. Eric? Jennifer?
I'd just like to request that at a future board meeting, we talk about potentially changing the nomenclature from DEI to equity, access, and opportunity, as recommended based on some of the things that are happening.
Thank you. Dan?
No.
Okay. Peter?
Just very brief, I just want to thank the teachers that came here to talk about math. I have a son in Ms. Giuliano's class, and it's been a learning experience for both of us with the new way of thinking about math. But it's something I wanted to just ask kind of in the budget, but I know I'm late and my brain might be a little fuzzy, but they mentioned, Allison and Mark mainly, I think, mentioned some of the gaps or some of the things that could be better about the program and the things that we're doing to fix that. Is there anything budget related that they needed, or I just wasn't sure if there was anything that they were kind of reaching?
Yeah, it's in the budget already, so
Okay,
the supplemental
sorry.
programs that they talked about, Success Maker, IXL, we have those as reoccurring costs in our BOE software, so that's there. That also comes with some training too that they can utilize, so it's already built in. When we say we're gonna continue those things, that's it. And I've met with Allison and I've met with, and said, is there anything you need? The things that she needed, the next generation science textbook, they're all in the budget, so nothing anybody asked for, it was excluded from the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
Just like to remind everyone, Holidays performance of Into the Woods is this weekend. Several Garrison alum will be on stage. Always Haldane, really high level theater if you've never gone to it, so it's worth a look. And I'll be done driving my theater person home at 10 o'clock every night.
I have no further comment this evening. All right. Next we have, be it resolved, the Board of Executive Session. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of receiving legal counsel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstention. Okay. We will adjourn executive session without any further action being taken. Thank you very much.